Hey, everybody. Today's going to be a fun one. We've got a guest who needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. He designs pedals. He designs amps. He designs rack systems, whole rigs. He makes guitars. His contacts list in his phone reads like most of our record collections. So, I saw Dave Friedman drinking a colada at Trader Dick's, and his hair was perfect. Without further ado, the owner of said hair, Dave Friedman.
Well, first off, I would never do the pina colada.
How about the beef chow mein?
Too much sweet for me.
Yeah, I think we've seen, at least on your evening streams, your preferences. So what you got? Coffee, or are you breaking out the good stuff?
We have
already?
water today.
A good man.
I already had some coffee. I'm good. I'm not quite the coffee addict that you are.
Yeah, few are, and you can spot them. But anyway, thank you for doing this. I got to remember to look at the lens once in a while instead of looking at the screen. I'm terrible at that. I get caught up in all this stuff. We're going to get to the chats, the questions in a little while. I thought we'd just do a kind of a free-form interview. And I don't want to ask the same questions that everyone asks, but I will start with one that everyone's going to ask you, just to give a sense of yourself. How did you end up doing what you do, from wanting to play guitar probably in a band to everything that you're doing now? And you can do a short or long version of that.
Well, I mean, well, I was always into gear, and even I was starting really early on, I was always, intrigued by how did that guitar player get that sound? How did this guitar player get that sound? I was, super into that. So at one point in time, I was amassing some gear, I was really young, between 16 and 18 years old, And I wound up selling a orange 4x12 cabinet, an old orange 4x12 cabinet, to actually Andy Brower, who, was a big deal at the time, in Los Angeles. Not a bad in. And then I was moving to I just had decided to move to Los Angeles. And, he goes, look me up when you get here, And so basically, really simply, I wound up getting a job there, Andy Brower Studio Rentals, where I started working. And, that consisted of rental gear, delivering studio guitar players' gear to sessions during that time frame. This would be like 1987, 88.
Yeah.
There was a lot of music going on, a lot of sessions, it was thriving, records were being made. So, yeah, that was awesome, because you started working in the industry.
Did Andy just throw you in the deep end and say,
"Yeah, well,
this needs to get done tomorrow.
Here's your job.
Here's your soldering iron. Go."
No, not yet for the soldering iron. Really, I mean, I had dabbled at before I got there with the soldering iron, but no, there was a guy that worked for him that was doing racks and well, there wasn't really pedal boards at the time. It would be racks, and they were doing that, and he was leaving the company, and I had been watching him because, of course, I was curious. I wanted to know, what was going on, and I was like, "Hey, Andy, I think I can do this for you." So I got thrown in the deep end there. I threw myself in the deep end, actually. And I started, working on stuff like that, and was really curious and interested in it all. So, I learned quick study.
So this would be in the heyday of MIDI rigs.
Heyday of MIDI rigs, yep.
When did the GFX switcher system come out? 90?
Yeah, somewhere around 90. I had involvement with that, actually, with
good
Josh
job
at Voodoo Lab and stuff.
Good job. That must have both made your job a lot easier and at the same time made you a lot busier because now you could do a lot more stuff, where you could use the old pedal with the MIDI stuff. And that was, I was aware of that at the time. I got into that about 4 years after that. So
yeah, you know, it was like the first sort of commercially available switcher, sort of, so to speak, that was at a reasonable price point, that wasn't custom from Bob Bradshaw or something.
Yeah,
you know.
And when did you leave Andy? When did you?
Well, you know, that it was steps. So Andy went into partnership with Greg Bales from Making Music in Chicago, a store in Chicago, and they opened a Making Music in Los Angeles, in the same building I was in. And then I started working for Making Music because I was starting to do the racks already, and that's just where my path led me, so to speak, you know. And then we moved locations to another location, more of a retail store, and I worked there till early 90s somewhere, maybe 93, something like that. And then I was fired. I was fired because I tell you why I was fired. At that point in time, Making Music owned Bogner. And also they were doing some distribution for Fryat or VHT at the time. And you know, I never really loved the Bogner ecstasy. You know, it was not it wasn't really my thing. So I was always sort of trying to sell someone something else.
That'll do it.
And, you know.
Well, you have warned me privately about burning bridges with some of the things I've pointed out in videos. And, you know, it is hard to find the balance between being honest and burning bridges unnecessarily. Sounds like you learned that lesson then. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. The ecstasy's, it's all right. It's a very over-engineered bit of all right.
Yeah. It just wasn't my sound. It wasn't my thing. So
yeah.
So I had started doing work with Bruce Egnater at the time. We developed together. Well, Bruce's main engineering chops developed the IE4 guitar preamp.
Right.
And I was a partner in this project.
And you're still doing it together with the synergy. Backtracking, did you know him back when you were growing up in Detroit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, Bruce is a wonderful, wonderful guy. And he's just so giving of his knowledge. And he's a lot of fun to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started this project together of making this 4-channel preamp. We made this 4-channel preamp. I helped get it to all the guys I was doing rigs for and things, like Tim Pierce and, oh God, so many people. They all wound up in their racks and stuff, you know. And of course, that's kind of when I really started learning how to change things in amplifiers or preamp circuits to alter the tone, you know, to change fundamentally, you know, what it was. Bruce was my mentor. So
well, good choice, man.
Yeah. Bruce was my mentor. He taught me a whole lot of stuff. So yeah. But I was that guy that took everything apart and learned how to put it back together again. You know, it's just like I'll figure it out. That was going to be one of my questions
for you. I mean, when I was like 12, my grandfather had just died, and he had this old Winchester rifle. And I was wondering shotgun. I was wondering how it worked. So I took the entire thing apart on my grandmother's dining table one night. All the little springs, all the little levers, all the little screws. And they came home, and they weren't horrified that the 12-year-old had the shotgun. They were horrified that the 12-year-old had fully disassembled this 1912 Winchester shotgun. And I said, well, I can put it back. So I put it back together, and they took it to a gunsmith, and he said, yep, works fine. But yeah, to that impulse just to, how does it work? So have you had success rates with most of those things, or have you had some horrifying, oh my God, what have I done now?
No, because I was the guy, you know. So when I was a kid, I remember this distinctly. My father was a doctor. He was a surgeon, highly skilled specialist surgeon. Okay. I remember we were putting together a wheelbarrow. And he's like staring at the instructions on how to put a wheelbarrow together, and he wasn't getting it, right? Yep. And I'm just like, and I was really young. I mean, super young. I was just like, well, wait, well, that part goes there, and that goes there, and it goes like this.
Yeah,
and I figured it out.
The ability to see a system, and that's the thing I don't think you can teach. I think people either have that, and you can nurture it, and you can develop it, or you don't. Now, granted, not all systems are the same. Your dad was obviously able to see, the vascular system or whatever, which was a totally abstract thing that the rest of us never see or encounter. But yeah,
right.
The people I know in this weird field that we're in tend to have that. What's interesting to me is a lot of the guys who are really good at what we do are not so great at the words and the emotions and the communications with humans. You seem to be an exception to that, which I think is one of the, so is John Suhr, so is Bruce. I think that's the reason some of you guys have just risen above, because I know a lot of guys who know more English Lyle, know way more than we do, but they're locked in their basement being mad at everyone.
Oh yeah, no, I by no means claim to know everything. I definitely don't know everything. Wouldn't
that be boring?
I have so much going on in my life now, though. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like I can't put anything more in there. It's like, hey, why don't you do this and learn this program and do that? I'm like going, I no, I can't. I just can't.
Well, speaking of that, I do want to ask you about your new pedal, but and I'll let you tell everyone about it. I'm sure you're sick of talking about it, but you need to.
Absolutely.
Part of the game. I was very pleasantly surprised to see that you had the digital modeling and all that. And I have questions about how you might have, and if you don't want to answer certain things, that's fine. The power amp response before the speaker response. Mm-hmm. But did you find someone to partner with to do the digital stuff, or did you just spend the last 6 years reading books? Because that's a whole other skill set.
Yeah, no, I can't. No. Well, first of all, most companies would not be even able to do this at all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
in the slightest.
I'm really impressed.
Yeah. No, there's another engineer that works for the team, and he helped with this for sure.
Well, it's always good to say, I don't know this, but I'm gonna get the best guy I can get, and I know my end of things. But before I turn it over to you to talk about the IRX, I had mentioned in a stream or two before that Fender, Marshall, all these companies are really desperately trying to figure out what to do when the tubes run out. So you get the Tone Masters, you get this, you get that. And I think what you're doing is very smart, because 12AX7s will be around longer than power tubes. 12AX7s sound great.
Yeah, but
relatively inexpensive. I'm not saying it's imminent, but I think what you've done now is one of the possible paths forward. When tubes get scarce, all right, let's get two preamp tubes. They're not going to be changed that much, and it sounds good. Whether this is the end-all, be-all for everyone, nothing is. But I think it's a much better approach than a lot of the solid-state modeler-ish things out there. Mm-hmm. But tell people what it is.
Well, okay. I have one sitting right here. It is a high-voltage tube guitar preamp, essentially. 2 full channels. How do I hold this to make it? Okay. Anyway, 2... Oh, this way. Can never quite decide. Here,
I'll just give you the screen while you do this.
It's a tube It's a tube preamp out of one of our amps, essentially. You know, you have a cleaner channel, which is kind of a plexi-like channel, and a BE kind of like channel, and then you have a boost where you can adjust boost gains on the side from nothing to as much gain boost as you'd like. But when you switch to the gain boost, it switches to a second master. So it's fully controllable, the volume level, if you want it louder, quieter, whatever you want to do with it. And then it has a digital back end that is has a power amp simulation of a B100 in it, and then you know, IR loading capability. So you can literally just take two cables, say you're at home in your computer, and plug in, plug out into a mic pre.
Well, that was the question that I watched about 5 of the different videos and interviews you've done on this, and Pete Thorne did a fantastic job, by the way, if you see this, Pete. But the question that I had that wasn't addressed directly was, everyone's talking about the IR, which is all speaker. What was happening between the preamp and the IR? So thank you, and I'll
well,
ask
yeah,
you more
there's a digital power a digital power amp simulation. So you know, the frequency response of that whole power section of the amp, and then you have adjustable presence and thump switches in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we lost Dave. He'll be back. If you're seeing this, Dave, just click on the link. It'll bring you right back. There we go. All right, he's back.
I don't know what happened there. Just everything went poof.
Just the gods don't like us, man. Yeah, you're a little bit pixelated. You must be having internet issues down there.
That would be weird. It's a direct connection. You know, it's plugged in. So
it's getting better now. So who knows? You were saying?
I don't know what I was saying.
Well, we were talking about the power amp modeling and all that stuff. But here's my point, my question, and it's a question I'm asking on behalf of everyone, or rather, a point I would like to make that I think this is a good example of. From the day you had this idea to the day you had them in boxes ready to send to people and make the announcement release date, people expect it's like, oh, we had this idea, and like 5 months later, we've got it. How long did this take?
Oh, man, that was like 2 years.
Yeah. How many prototypes did you go through?
Not that many, actually, but 2 or 3.
I suppose once you get the preamp would be relatively no-brainer for you. That's your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Once you get the architecture for the digital stuff, and then it's just a matter of, okay, we're going to change that parameter, reload it, but
yeah, but it's not like a simple tube. I mean, it is the exact preamp that we use. It's it's standard tube preamp that we use, but there's so much more tech involved with the switching and the switching power supply that's in it to boost the voltage to 200.
Yeah, well, who's the guy
volts.
in England who does those?
Victory?
No, not Victory. They have. I reviewed one. I can't remember the name of it. It's a shame that it's a really nice pedal. Paul Stafford Cook uses them, I believe, but he's got a high voltage tube supply in there. And the first one that came in, I was kind of like, oh, okay, another tube preamp.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's running like 300 volts. I'm like, okay, it's legit, because I remember all the ART bullshit in the early 90s, and it was like, hey, it's got 30 volts on it. Marketing tubes.
Marketing tubes, exactly. These aren't marketing tubes. This is high voltage.
No. So I've already seen enough to know yours is legit. How are you dealing with whine in the digital side with the switching power supply? Because so many digital pedals come out and they have a whine because the guy designing it is in digital world, and that doesn't matter. And the audio guys seem to be just accepting of it, and it drives me nuts. I mean, Strymon's whine.
There's none of that.
Okay. I'll have to check one out someday.
Yeah, it's dead silent. There's no whine. That's a high gain thing. It would amplify a whine in 2 seconds, you know?
Well, good, because I've got a whole bunch of digital pedals on various boards over the years that I'm like, how does no one hear this? I mean, you run into that all the time, I'm sure, with the various devices. And it almost doesn't matter which power supply. You can use yours, the Strymons, the good Voodoos, you know, and just certain digital pedals have a high-pitched whine and hiss.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely, they do. A lot of them. There's a lot of design flaws in products, as you point out a lot. You know, I try but there's design flaws in every product, and you know, there's products that are shipped. There's pedals that are shipped with a switching power supply, you know, wall wart transformer. Yeah. That the wall wart transformer is actually a very poor one, and it will actually cause a horrible noise with the pedal, unusable.
Oh yeah, I get a new digital thing in with a little Sublime. Like, oh, it's that same damn thing. They're all using the same ones. How do you ship it?
How do you ship it that way? I don't understand.
The thing that kills me is that I could plug in headphones into this iPhone, just cheap little white earbuds, use them as a microphone, and get a lower signal to noise level with the stuff in here where audio is pretty much an afterthought than you get in a $300, $400 digital pedal. Kingsley amplifiers, Kingsley pedals. That's right, Jay. Jay Vaughn.
Oh yeah.
So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that Kingsley is not, in fact, doing marketing tubes.
That's good.
So how long have you lived on the set of Twin Peaks there behind you? Expecting the little dancing dude to come out backwards. It's quite the look. I've got my own red curtains, but you can't see it in this shot right now.
Oh yeah, it's a vibey room.
So people are always asking me desert island amps, and I'm always like grateful to be on a desert island with running electricity. But what are the amps that you love that people would not expect? I mean, if you say you're 6850 watt, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, of course, people would expect that, right?
You're big high watts. But what are some funky old amps or really clean amps or like jazz combos that you would expect to find in a Holiday Inn dining room in 1958 that just make your toes curl up?
I love old Silvertone amps. I think those sound cool. Those sound great.
1484s or...
Yeah, you know, various ones, to be honest. I mean, you know, the standard, you know, 610 one or the, you know, that's always interesting. A 610 cabinet, what the hell is that? You know, why does that exist? I don't know, but...
Made of thick cardboard, so... You know,
yes, the whole thing was made of thick cardboard, yes. Yeah, but those amps, man, they're still working after all these years, you know?
I don't mind the ones that actually have a power transformer.
Yes, correct. You know, that's a cool amp. There were some other funky amps, like some old, you know, WEM amps that I've loved. WEM Dominator. Well, that's an amazing amp.
If you can find one, yeah.
If you can find one or own one, yeah. Not very common here. What else? I mean, I love my Voxes. I love my, you know, high watt. You know, like we said, the 50 watt Plexi. A great Fender Deluxe or Super Reverb, fantastic. You know, more oddball things. You know, Lab Series solid state amps kind of neat.
Oh actually,
yeah, if you run it a certain way.
King's X right there.
Yeah, it's cool. It can be cool. Man,
I tried to make one of those. I tried to make the preamp from one of those for a buddy, Chris Nixon, who's actually going to probably be our guest next month, Nashville Guitar Monster.
Yeah, I know.
And there's a compressor circuit in there that uses a chip that hasn't been made in forever. And I tried and I tried to make it work with alternate components. I just could not get the thing. You know, and it had all kinds of inductors. I was able to get that to work by using op amps instead of inductors. You know that trick. But the thing was just going to be a monster. I mean, there's certain eras of solid state that have passed, and replicating from that to like a Thomas Organ Super Butyl, you know, you can't do it unless if you have enough money, it can happen. But for the rest of us, it's just, it's odd to me that the longest lived, most successful amps we use are still pretty much all from 1958, where you'd think everything was just the crudest of the crude and things would get better. But the new technologies that came out, the 60s, the 70s, even some of the 80s stuff, that's past because everyone's gone to smaller and smaller transistor stuff. But tubes is tubes, man.
Tubes is tubes. It's still the same tech, basically just put together slightly different. You can't go wrong with an old Tweed Bassman, that's a great one. I'm not really that into other Tweed amps that much. I was never that into a Tweed Deluxe. I get the point. Wasn't really my thing. I like the Tweed Bassman much more. Tweed Twin, which is also Marshall-y, sort of.
Yeah. Well, there are two Tweed Twins. One's a 2x12 version of the Bassman, and the other one's weird.
The 212 version of the Bassman.
Yeah. Basically, the blueprint for everything Marshall did. It's still amazing that Jim and Leo did not actually play guitar.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine when they first started doing that? It was like, let's just make this, okay? And some of the early, Marshall amps, the earliest versions, it's just like, it's just a crappy aluminum chassis that was drilled out. It was archaic. It was archaic time.
It was a rushed Fender copy done in the basement of a drum shop. I'm sure Pete Townsend should have gotten his name on that company somehow. From what I've read, he seems to be the guy who pushed them to become what they became.
Yeah.
And I think modern players criminally underrate Pete Townsend.
Oh, I love Pete Townsend.
Yeah.
That's
I think everyone has an image of you just hanging with the guys from Ozzy and Guns N' Roses and all that stuff. But what are some music that you love? I mean, that's really important to you that people wouldn't expect. What would be in your iPod, so to speak?
Man, I hate music. I mean, you get to a point after working in the industry so long. After a while, you do sort of not listen to music sometimes.
I don't listen to guitar music very often.
It's a good question. My music taste is pretty varied. It's not, all the classics, of course, are great. Always, I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan, big Who fan, big, Aerosmith fan, older Aerosmith.
Oh yeah, Toys and Rocks.
Yeah, Toys and Rocks. Yeah, those are the records. And and many other things too. From that era, from the late '60s, early '70s. The going was an era where a lot of it was, you loved it at the time, and then later you're looking back on it going, okay, I'm not, not going to be listening to a Motley Crue record now. You know what I mean?
Wasn't then. I was a Smith's Cure REM kid, so.
Yeah. Well, see, that's another side. So I grew up in Detroit, and there's sort of two sides to Detroit. There was like this really heavy rock thing, and then you also had the kind of alt side, which is exactly what you just said. The Smiths and New Order and all this other side, this other dark kind of club side. So there were two factions, so to speak, and I somehow straddled the line between the two. I like both.
That's good. That's good because it means you had ears and something between them that was.
I love The Cure. That's fantastic.
The thing I always think about is back in the '80s, you had like the guys who lived in their vans and they just played, and that was the REMs, that was the Replacements, that was Black Flag, that was Metallica. So I can dislike some of the Metallica stuff. But I have to respect how hard they worked to get there, just the same way the Husker Du and REM and all those guys were. Because there was no money for the music that they were making until like '87.
Oh, yeah,
they were all just living in vans and sleeping on couches and stuff. And I have to say, if I have to listen to Metallica, I prefer the stuff when they were living hand to mouth and the stuff when they had therapists in the studio.
First two records. Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. That was for me. I think those were. Well, that was the kind.
You liked them when they had bass.
That was sort of the sound of my youth. You know what I mean? So I went through different stages in my music. There was a time we were mostly introduced to music from a friend of mine's sister who was older, and she came from the 70s era. So you got introduced to your Led Zeppelins and your Aerosmiths and Bad Company and blah blah blah. And then I went into this as a kid, I went into this really sort of super heavy stage that I went through. And that's where Slayer, Metallica, all sorts of other crazy, really heavy music, and then sort of got out of that, kind of moved forward into more kind of the hard rock of the time, so to speak, And then, I always felt that I moved along with it because then come the 90s, and then you're rolling into bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, and I thought Soundgarden was an amazing band.
Oh, absolutely! I had their
amazing.
I stole their first record from the college radio station because they got promo tapes, and the promo tapes said whoever listened to all the stuff was not going to play on the college radio station. They had just left in a box out in the hallway. And Loud Love was one of their rejects. And I got that tape, and I wore it out. This is in Atlanta. And they came to Atlanta, and I was there with like 100 other people. And it was mind-blowing.
Yeah. That was a great
90.
band.
Yeah.
Great band. There was a weird little transition when I remember when that happened, when you started seeing, the Nirvanas and everything else. It was an interesting transition because at first you're kind of stuck where you were. And then you're like, what is this Eddie Vedder guy? How does he sing? This voice sounds weird. And then
I had the opposite experience because all of a sudden the radio started sounding like the music I was listening to anyway in the clubs, and all of a sudden.
Well, there you go. So that's good. But then you got into it and liked it. I never stayed stuck in one musical time frame, so to speak.
Yeah, I was so sick of the LA metal thing, and here comes the ballad, and I was 12-string E minor. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, not very. Many bands did not survive.
Yeah, neither did their hairdressers.
No, not at all. So, I don't know, and I have a love for like old jazz stuff too. I mean, I don't really like actively listen to it, but I will put on like a station every once in a while and just chill. I find it very soothing.
Old jazz, you mean 50s, you mean 40s, you mean 70s?
40s.
Okay.
Old.
Good stuff. Yeah. I'm an Ella Fitzgerald nut.
Yeah, that's amazing. So,
she had perfect pitch and perfect phrasing. She and Sinatra, I think, had the best phrasing. But her pitch was just immaculate.
I got a great story to tell you about Sinatra that someone told me, but I'm not going to do it on the air.
All right. See, there are benefits to doing this stuff, guys. You should get into the industry. Eventually, you can hear this stuff.
That's for Patreon subscribers.
Yeah. Go to Dave's OnlyFans.
It would be sort of an off-color thing to put on the air. So.
A lot of the Sinatra stuff and all the Buddy Rich stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some ugly stuff in context today.
Yeah, I have to watch what I say casually. And I've alluded to this in other streams. With the best of intentions and the best of will in the world, I was still growing up in the 80s, and there were words in our everyday vocabulary that were just there. And,
absolutely.
And if I let them slip live on the internet, out of very old habit, without any malice of thought, I mean, I don't want to stir up that kind of shit over nothing, especially since I don't agree with them, but they were just there from people, schoolyard insults and Eddie Murphy routines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Randy Steff is saying Ella and Joe Pass. Yeah, that's a great record. And Ella live in Berlin, I think 1968.
Oh, yeah.
When she was at the very last bit of her prime. I mean, she kept singing into the 1980s and singing well, but still, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to go into jazz mode on you, Dave, but yeah.
No. That's great stuff. But where my heart sort of lies is loud guitars.
I had a suspicion.
Loud, sort of. I mean, not gained out and super heavy, but like loud, Marshall-esque guitars. And in fact, I was out last night, so I'm a little weary today. I went to go see the band The Darkness.
Oh, I love Justin.
And Justin is he plays. He has two of my amps now. He's playing, and he bought another amp for me. And it's a long story. It took a trip to England, and Custom sent it back. Yeah, it's really weird. They called FedEx when it was there in Customs. Is there anything I need to do? No, it should be cleared any day now. It's fine. And okay. And then all of a sudden, everyone gets a notice that it's coming back. And I'm like, wait, what? So I have not only did it come back, and I just got it on Thursday back. They were going to play here Friday. When I get it back Thursday afternoon, we open the box. They had taken it apart. They had taken the back panel off the amp. The back panel screws were nowhere to be found in the box.
Of course not. Yeah.
The chassis was not screwed into the chassis, into the head box. There was one screw in it. The rest of the screws were in the bottom of the box. The chassis was bouncing around all the way back from England. Surprisingly, not a single tube was bad.
Wow.
Or broken, which I couldn't believe. The power switch was broken because the chassis was banging around. The head box was I'm not broken, but where the chassis was banging into the corner of it, it was marred up.
Yeah.
I had to fix it. I had to put a new panel on the amp. I had to put it back together, put it in a different head box.
And of course, UK Customs paid for the whole thing. Of course, right?
Well, this is something. Well, we took pictures of everything, and I have pictures of when I sent it. Also, they sent it back without half the packaging.
Nice.
So, I have a big beef with FedEx right now.
Yeah.
So I have to start that on Monday, and I think they just charged me for it coming back.
That's nice of the boys. Yeah, I'm trying to get an app from here to Japan, and it's 82 pounds, and no one wants to take it for less than like $700. So,
there's a way to do it.
I'll talk to you later about that.
Yeah. We had a great rate on that amp going over, which is a FedEx great rate plan that you can do, and the rate was $175 or something. But
that's amazing.
Came back, and I think they billed me $500. So,
well, I know where they can put that.
Now I need to really beat them up.
Yeah, go for it on behalf of all of us who've been screwed over by the various companies. But I want to talk about Justin Hawkins. When The Darkness Thing Called Love came out, 2000, 2001, whatever. I hated that thing. Oh, it was obnoxious.
Right.
And that video, I was like, oh, this is crappy. I'm going to have to hear this crap for the next 6 weeks, and then it'll be gone. No, it was 6 months before it was gone. And then I discovered his channel, and he's articulate, and he's bright, and he's funny, and he's really a big fan of music. And I really, so if you see this, Justin, or you tell him, Dave, I think the guy's great. And I totally get, in the context of knowing more about him, what Thing Called Love was. But at the time, I'm like, what the hell is this? So I'm sure that if he was on the outside looking in, he would have felt the same way, because it's wherever the top is and where over the top is, he's over that. So
yeah, exactly. And that's what it's all about. But man, I got to tell you, it was a rock show.
I bet.
It was loud guitars, louder. A lot of shows you go to these days, I hear vocals and bass and drums.
Yeah.
And even if it's a guitar-based band, you're like, where's the guitars? Not this. If anything, I would say the vocals you could just hear.
Yeah.
Just barely hear. Like in true old school rock fashion. So it was pleasant. It was fun. And they're lovely people. Justin is a lovely guy. We hung out a lot after the show and before. And his brother also, Dan, is really lovely people. Well, I mean, just awesome people.
He just
Makes
strikes
you
me
love them.
as a great, gregarious, interesting, but interested person. Most of the really interesting people tend to be interested as well. And that's a distinction that's hard to make sometimes. So, but Justin, if you see this, write again. Yeah, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan in '89 at an outdoor amphitheater, and he had a rig of like 6 Fenders and 4 Marshall 4x12s and various combinations. He was louder than the PA. I don't think there was any guitar coming through the PA, and the PA was just matching the level coming off the stage of his amps.
Yeah.
It was ungodly good, and I was in like the 6th row, and I couldn't hear for the next week. And about the same year, I saw ZZ Top, and they were way too loud. This is in the days. PAs used to be made of little pointy teeth that would just shoot out at you throughout the entire night, and you just could not hear for a week afterwards. I'm glad that the levels have come down, but I think, as you say, the pendulum has swung too far, especially when it comes to guitars. It's possible to be balanced.
With all the technology of PA systems these days, I don't think they sound better.
I think it depends on the PA
they sound worse.
And who's running it. So I think 95% of the time you're probably going to be correct. I saw Billy Joel live last May. Of course, that is the very top of the line PA guy and the very top of the line PA. That sounded like everything was being played live in your living room. Your living room just happened to be the size of a stadium. That was phenomenal. But that's a sonic experience you're not going to get except from like a Billy Joel or a Sting or someone, A, who has the budget, B, who gives a fuck to begin with, because, like the Stones don't care. They just want it to be loud. But most of the time, you get wimpy guitar mixes or stereo things that disappear unless you're at front of house.
For sure.
Mono versus stereo. That's a great thing to ask you. I'm sure people will be asking you that kind of stuff, but when should you run stereo?
What sort of band are you in? Let me answer this with a question.
People love that, in my experience.
Or as my tagline, it depends.
Yeah.
Are you the only guitar player in the band? If you're not, what exactly do you do with the stereo image? Where so you got a left and right. Where does that go? Does it go left and right? If you're the only guitar player, it could go left and right. If you have 2 guitar players, where does it go? Someone tell me.
And is the PA?
I think mono is better in general.
Is the PA going to amplify it in stereo? And if so,
will the room allow that? These days, the PA's probably stereo these days, but the old days PAs really weren't stereo.
In clubs, are they in clubs now? I don't go to clubs anymore, but at the times I've been around them, they have not been. One of my pet peeves is when you go to a restaurant and they've got the speakers in the restaurant in stereo, which means that you're hearing half the mix and the other mix is in the room over there, because if you're watching
you got to put
this,
the speakers relatively close together, facing something, so you can hear both.
If you're watching this and running a restaurant, odds are you should push that little mono button on whatever system you have. Your customers will appreciate it.
Or don't place your speakers like across the room from each other. How about that?
Yeah. It's amazing how little thought people give to sound. Speaking of giving little thought to sound, what do you do on your days off? What do you do to stop thinking about all this crap that we deal with? I mean, we love our jobs. We love what we do, but at the same time to punch the clock, do something else.
I have first of all, I have 1 day off a week. And that's not even totally a day off. And, often that would be spent with the family, or maybe we go to lunch that day somewhere, or not much gets done on that day. There's not much there is no other interest in my life, so to speak.
Well, you take off to Vegas from time to time, and
yeah, but it's always sort of associated with movie, with something, music, something associated with something.
Yeah,
it's.
Well, everyone thinks NAMM's a great fun thing to do until they do it. Yeah. So. And
you know what?
I'm speaking from the perspective of a NAMM visitor. You would actually have to have a booth and be stuck there for 4 days.
Yeah, and we used to do it really big too. And
I remember the banner, and I heard about the fire, which sucks. I'm sorry.
The we used to do it really large. Yeah, you talk nonstop to people for 4 days straight, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah,
and you do get to a point. Well, we used to do it in an interesting way. I had learned years. We had a bar in our sound room at our booth. And let me tell you, the bar made talking to people for 4 days a lot more pleasant. Because then you're sort of hanging out and having a cocktail or two, and and so are they, and then your chats are chats. It's but after 4 days of that, man, you are burnt, crispy burnt. But somehow I still love doing it. So I don't know what's wrong with me.
Well, where else can you hear 14 different loud musical demonstrations happening at the same time, separated by several hundred yards in a big echoey space? I think it's phenomenal. That said, I was at a summer NAMM in Nashville once, and I heard coming from the distance the greatest copy of Bernard Purdie I ever heard in my life, and I was snaking through the entire crowd to see who this is, who's absolutely such a great doing such a great tribute to Bernard Purdie, and it was Purdie, and I got to meet him and shake his hand, and Clyde Stubblefields, and Clyde's no longer with us. So, to this guy who was also a drummer, just getting to meet Bernard Purdie and have him give me 5 seconds, that was totally worth an entire day. But I mean, it is phenomenal when you hear that stuff in front of you.
Right.
Just casually, like, he plays drums like you're just taking a sip of water right now, and it's wow, Dave, that was great.
Right.
But I mean, you probably get that a little bit more often than the rest of us when you have the players, your clients, come over and pick up rigs and test things. How often do you get the talent versus the tech, like a Slash, for example?
Man, really large guys, I never see the talent.
Yeah,
it's the tech.
I've never understood that. I've had dealings with that, and if I were the person who make my living being a great guitarist, I would want to be sure of every aspect of that. I would want to, and I've dealt with guys who are very famous, and I've only dealt with their techs, and he likes it, he doesn't like it. That's the feedback I get. Or I tried it, I thought it was great, but he didn't like it. I'm like, well, if you tell me what he'd like different, maybe I could, So
yeah.
Well,
I don't know. Some of the techs I deal with are really close with the artist, and there's good communication. So I eventually will see the artist generally.
But I think people get a sense that you're just like hanging out with the guys from Guitar Player all the time, off the covers.
Well, it depends on who it is,
Yeah.
Depends,
Who are the guys whose ears have surprised you?
Best ears in the business, Steve Stevens.
Really? Can you give us an example?
He's really, really, really he knows exactly what he wants to hear. He knows how to articulate it to you. He knows enough about electronics, and he knows enough about soldering cables, and like he's done this stuff in his life, and he's He's not afraid to get his hands dirty with stuff like that, and he just is very capable of articulating what he wants, which is half
rare.
the battle.
Yeah, that's extraordinarily rare. I usually get vague, wishy-washy, emotional things, and I'm like, okay, let's
yeah, you have to learn how to interpret over the years. Dealing with enough people, you start learning how to interpret what they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wish it was a little more blue. Well, what's blue? Okay.
Yeah, I've had my variations on that, and I don't know, man. I just thought it sounded better before. I mean, when the speakers were out of phase and all your filter caps leaking and it hummed and you couldn't turn it up above 2, you like that? That was the before? Yeah, man, I just really bonded with that. It's hard to be polite sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you about horror story clients and all that, but let me ask you this before we take a break, and then when we get back from the break, we'll start taking people's questions. What is the biggest fuck up you've ever made in someone else's amp or rack, and how did you survive that? What did you do?
Oh man, biggest fuck. You know, nothing. Someone asked me this before too, and you know what? Nothing comes to mind.
You've repressed those memories. Okay.
Well,
we've all fucked things up, you know. But you might not have fucked up someone else's thing. You might have fucked up your own thing while learning.
Nothing pops into my head like I remember it. I mean, I'm sure I made some mistakes in wiring a rig, before, where what I thought was going to work didn't wind up working, and I was scrambling to make it work. For sure, that's happened.
So that's just a waste of your own time.
There's something I've learned about that. Do it right. Don't think you can do it a different way. Just do it the way you know is going to work, and using the equipment that you need to use to do that.
Well, then let me ask
Don't try to
the
do
flip
it on
side.
the budget. Don't try to do it on this. It's not going to work.
Well, let me ask you the flip side then. What was the first really big thing you did that you're very proud of, where you realized, hey, I knocked that out of the park, and I'm not sure everyone else could?
This is like, I've done so many guitar rigs over the years. It's hard. Some of them I can't even remember at this point because that was from the 90s or something, and
But you never had a sense of, hey, yeah, I do the hell out of this. I'm going to do more of this.
I did it the very first time I did Steve Stevens' rig, because I went in to that going, he was like using kind of a pedal board, and he was like, I kind of don't want to use the switching system anymore because I didn't like really how it sounded, and he was referring to a Bradshaw system he had.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can make you a system that'll be totally transparent and you'll love. I'll tell you what, if you don't love it, you don't have to pay for it. Well, he paid for it, but
very good, because there's always that risk that I'm glad that he actually did have those good ears you mentioned, because there are a lot of guys been like, I like the old one better just because it was green. Anyway, I think we're going to take a 7-minute intermission, and when we come back, we'll open it up to you guys' questions. So hang on and stay tuned, and this will be fun. See you guys back in 7. And we're back with our special guest, David Friedman. And he will take
our host.
questions now. So let's get started. Let's start with Jeff Mazay's question here. I'll let you go first. What's your opinion on bad cat amps?
Oh. Well, I mean, this Bad Cat Amps originally was, they originally started with Mark Sampson, right? After Matchless, or no? Was that?
I think so.
I think so. Yeah. So originally they were kind of a Matchless derivative, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Wired very similar originally. And they've done a ton of things over the years. I mean, I don't know if I really have an overwhelming opinion on Bad Cat amps. I know my friend Peter Ahrens is there now, and they've come out with some new amps that are quite nice.
I'd like to see some of their new stuff. I hope they have stopped using can clamps on tube basses.
Yeah, right. I saw that one.
Yeah, they've done that in the past.
For the rectifier tubes, right?
Yeah.
Matchless did that too.
I've seen it on output tubes in some of their amps. I don't remember if it's Bad Cat or Matchless, but people would then put like a Sovtech wafer base in there and then tighten it. Speak to your boys over there at a Tone King about not putting bear trap retainers on wafer base glass tubes on that.
They don't use those anymore.
Good.
There's no wafer base tubes anymore.
Yeah, well, they had them for a while, and but they didn't change out the bear traps.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway, they made that.
I don't use the wafer base. I don't use the tube clamps. So
yeah,
I understand the point, and I might in the future, but they won't be. We can't get those tubes anymore anyway.
Really? Oh, I guess the Sovtech, yeah. Do you say Sovtech or Sovtech? I've heard both.
I say Sovtech, but I mean, Sovtech is probably right. I'm not sure.
I mean, it is Soviet
right.
tech, but, or formerly was. So, all right, so here's a question for you. All right, because there were so many questions while we weren't taking questions, and now
I've heard, just to reiterate, the Bad Cats, I've heard some good Bad Cats over the years, older ones and things. And again, like I said, Peter Ahrens now is there, so he's doing good stuff.
And my only problem with Matchless and Bad Cats is that they tend to idle, to bias EL84s at 19 watts instead of what the data sheet max is. So 14 watts is good, guys. Look at 14 watts. That's a good point. That's a little bit above 100%.
I'm guilty too.
You naughty boy.
My 20 watt amps are way beyond the proper dissipation.
the ones of yours I've had in have not been. They've been right.
Yeah, they are.
They've been right in the 13.5, 14 watt range with 120 volts coming out of the wall. I've verified that.
Okay.
I would have busted you out, man. Maybe I got some special ones. Maybe they're this one's going to Lyle. Don't fuck it up.
Maybe you got some lower current tubes in there. Maybe the lower current set. But I mean, yeah. We run them hot, and
you can push it, but you can only push it so far before. In the case of Matchless, the panels start to melt. Or Fender, if you're watching this, and I've got to contact it. Fender, I've been trying to get in touch with. The EL84s bias at 120%. That is a cathode bias thing, not on the fixed bias amp so much, guys. Anyway, Paul McGilloway says, how different are the Friedman Runt and the Friedman Small Box?
Which Friedman Runt? So a Runt. Okay, the dirty channel. Let's talk the dirty channels because there's two. If it's a 50 or 20, there's two different clean channels. Mm-hmm. Not radically different in circuit. They're basically the same circuit. There are a few slight differences in component values in the first gain stages that cause a reasonably big difference in tone, though. So. There's like slightly bigger coupling cap, and there's a it technically has slightly less gain, but slightly less gain, but the slightly less gain also makes less of a load on the first coupling cap, so it's a little fatter in the small box. So, I mean, it could be a Runt can be changed to be that. I have done that a couple times for people.
Yeah, sadly I've only had experience with a few of your models. There's a used JJ Jr. out at the Guitar Center out here, and a friend of mine manages the Pro Audio division. I need to call him and see if I can borrow that for a couple of days and give it a little once over. I like featuring good amps on the channel, and yours qualify, and I like to know about what's on the market. I'm trying to get in touch with the guys at Rev and Third Power just to broaden my knowledge what's out there.
On the earlier JJs, you know, when we first started doing them, they were modified versions of things. So there was some some hand modifications to some of that. Currently, it's its own board, so it's been redone.
Well, you know,
because when you first do it, it's like, okay, we're going to do this, and we can do this on this platform, the 20-watt platform. Let's change this, and we did it that way for a while, and then it's a success. So you wind up doing the board for it, you know.
Yeah. Do enough people want it to justify doing a custom run? Makes total sense to me. I mean, it's like, I mean, how many decades? I guess one. But, you know, how many years did Marshall use the same board for 2203s and 1987s? You know, it's just...
Oh, for a million things.
Yeah,
or a million different amps.
The same board slightly differently. Here's a question from Kellen707, and I can answer from my end. I have no experience, but maybe Dave does. Have you guys either played or serviced the old AMS amps? He's got a VGT 105.
I've never even heard of it.
Neither have I. Sorry, Kellen. We always
but what I have serviced that was very interesting to me is Neil Young's Baldwin Exterminator. Have you ever seen a Baldwin Exterminator?
Not an Exterminator, no.
I think it's the Exterminator. I'm pretty sure that's right.
I had one of the Willie Nelsons in, but I don't remember which model that one's called either.
It sits about chest height. That's how big it is. It's a combo. It sits about chest height. You know, like it's like a 5 foot tall amplifier, and then it has like I forgot the speaker complement, but there's like it's stereo, and there's 3 speakers per side, kind of full range. So there's like a mid-range driver and a bass driver and a treble sort of driver. And
does it have a little push button for bossa nova?
I don't remember, but
sounds
I gotta
like
tell
that
you,
era.
We got to service this amp. We checked it all out, and it's all working. And then we finally realized what was wrong was someone had wired the speakers out of phase.
That'll do it.
Why does it sound bad? Well, it's that. But I got to say, this thing is huge. When you played through it, it sounded incredible. Incredible. The reverb and the trem that was in it, and even it was a solid state amp, it pleasantly distorted in a cool way as you turned it up, you know, semi-gritty, like a semi-gritty, semi-dirty, clean kind of sound. And I'm like listening to it going, oh, God, I kind of want one of these. It's just so stupid looking. I love it.
Do you have the schematic? Because you probably have to roll your own at this point. But
well, no, I don't mean like get a real one, but I find the most amusing thing of it, it had one handle on it, and it was on the top of the amp. So this is almost a 5 foot tall amp. Someone, you know, some giant is going to come along and carry it with the one handle? I don't understand.
It
was cool looking.
I might have
alley.
done that. You know, not to be like, but I would when I bring amps in. Take amps from and drop off at the music store in town where I did that for a long time. I'd have like a twin in one hand and an SVT in the other, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I do." I think that's what perfectly positions me in the market. Is I'm old enough to know how to work on an SVT, but young enough I can still pick one up. Because
I don't even want to pick up an SVT anymore.
It is a very small Venn diagram. Those who know how and those who can. Because, you know, bless his heart, my friend Roland Lumby in the UK is phenomenal, but he's had back issues, and he's got belts and straps and pulley systems that lift amps up off the floor and to the side and down on his bench.
Yeah.
And he'll do it for like a deluxe reverb. But, you know, I've had back problems in the past. Bad backs are no joke. So, Roland, if you see this, be well and keep using those things. Here's a question from Clyde Broadway. He just got a Bartell era Royalist. Mark's take on a Plexi. Mark does fantastic stuff. It's awesome. He was wondering if you ever worked with Mark Bartell at BAD.
I didn't. I never had the pleasure of talking to Mark Bartell at all. I remember when that transition happened. I remember, I mean, there's problems everywhere, but there were some like issues with some of the early Bartell amps too. And like if you try to work on a couple of the models and they escape me, it's oh boy. It's an interesting build the way he did it and the take on it. It was always very kind of yeah, you just wouldn't want to work on it.
I've seen some of his Tone Kings where it'd be like little component pyramids over each stage.
Yes, component pyramids.
And it's like, that's lovely. I don't want to ever have to work on that. So the current BAD era Tone Kings where everything's on a PCB makes a lot of sense. Though, as I've told people, they haven't gotten everything right. They're making great strides. But I've seen what Mark's doing today with his current layouts, and it's insanely good.
That's cool.
From 3D printing, special little standoffs with wire passes through them, it's way over the top. It's way past the point of what you need to make a high quality app. But it's beautiful, and I'm glad it exists. Let's see here, a quick one. Cash Shadow. He's running a ST20 Marshall and a PV boot at the same time. Phase is the only thing you're going to run into, phase and ground loops. But, if it doesn't hum, then you don't have a ground loop. If it does hum, you break the ground loop in the audio path, not the safety ground. So don't put one of those adapter plugs on the AC cables.
I have a simple solution. Simple solution. Buy a Radial Twin City AB box, little blue one.
Yep.
Has a phase lift. It has a ground ISO transformer, ground lift. And it has a phase switch.
Yep. Push the phase switch. If it sounds bad, it's out of phase. If it sounds good, you're golden.
Yeah.
Yeah. The follow up to that is if you were to be running, say, your PV on one side and the deluxe reverb on the other side, and one day you plug in the normal channel, and the next day you plug in the vibrato channel, those are out of phase with each other. So if you do that, you would need to change the polarity out of the ABY box as you change channels on the Fender. But like Dave says, the radial stuff is great. Lifts the ground without any safety issues. Flips the polarity. Transparent. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's a wonderful thing. I used to make an ABY box, but there's no point. The radial's got it covered. Let's see.
Sure.
Here's a question. Briggs Mech. Is it a definition of Class A operation to run an output tube at 100%? No. Class A is not the same thing as cathode biased. This gets in the weeds, but there's a lot of confusion. And most people, when they say an amp is Class A, it's not. It's Class AB with some odd characteristics perhaps, but it's just cathode biased. Dave, is there anything you want to add to that or clarifications?
That's what you just said. You could maybe define a little more what the actual Class A would be.
Yeah, but that
Class
also
that
also gets into a big can of worms. Let me put it this way: unless you're dealing with a champ, one output tube. Typically,
right?
6V6 on the or 6L6 on the Champ 12, you're going to be dealing with small transformers, one output tube, and low wattage. And when you see an amp that has a standard size power transformer and two tubes, and it says it's Class A and it's 30 watts, or four L84s and says Class A, 30 watts, it's not Class A.
Bias.
If it was Class A. And at 30 watts, you would have at least 8 EL84s, and the transformer would be the size of my head, and the thing would weigh a ton because there's so much more current you need to have. The only person I've seen really do this in guitar world is Jinka, and he shouldn't because his stuff is unsafe, and he makes little glued pyramids of axial caps. And about that much clearance between the metal leads and the metal chassis. They're going to arc. They can come loose because it's just held in place with glue. Unsafe at any speed. And it's a lot of money to spend on huge transformers and multiple, like 6 or 8 6L6s to be as loud, to be 50 watts in Class A. It's very different from when you get to like a monoblock Macintosh kind of setup. But again, big iron, low output. It's a sound that we don't really need in guitar amps. AB with cathode or fixed bias is kind of getting 99% of everything you need. And the player matters more than any of that.
There you have it.
I will ask Dave. I'll let you ask Dave. When is his take on an AC30 coming?
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Early next year, probably.
It's always fun getting these things together because you gotta. I mean, I've had so many problems getting my own thing going. Just I chose, to do it in the middle of a distribution supply issue and COVIDs and everything. This threw everything out the window for me for a while. But you are between your existing finances and your production facility, you are much more able to bring something to a market than I am, and you are much less able to than the next tier guys, or, the guys who do twice as many a month as you, or the filmers.
Well, I mean,
it's tough for anyone to bring things to market. There are a lot of costs and considerations people aren't aware of.
Well, that's not really the problem. It just takes the time. It's like you have to make the prototype. Okay, is the prototype perfect? Is this what we want to use? Okay, yes, this is what we want to use. All right, now we have to order the parts, the boards, the transformers.
Mm-hmm.
How long is the transformers going to take to get here? How long is these parts going to take? If you happen to use something that has a crazy lead time, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
So, and then, you got to get the cosmetics right, and you got to get, to make the cabinet shop has to be making the cabinets, and it's not a...
Well, it's one of those things, people don't think about. All right, well, I'm going to use this. Say that you were going to, I don't know if you are, but let's say that you were going to use this Panasonic ECQ, and you look, and Mauser's got 30,000 of them, and DigiKey's got 25,000 of them. You're like, great. Next week, you get an end-of-life notice on that product. You're like,
sure.
Well, I hope they had something with the same rating and lead spacing. Otherwise, I think you're talking Thursday night with Jay's about the little green caps in Marshalls and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they just went away. Kind of sort of made today.
I liked how those sounded.
I'm pretty sure that the Vichy still makes them instead of Philips, and they're orange instead of green now. But I can't be 100% sure because I've not had 50 of the greens to compare to 50 of the new orange ones to make sure they're exactly the same. But those sound good if you can deal with the small lead spacing. But yeah, those yellow Zycons you were talking about, Roy Blankenship loved those. And I know.
Well, that came from me originally.
Well, good on you. And I went to get a whole bunch.
They did sound fantastic.
They had like 12 left. I'm like, what? And they're gone. So
they're gone. Well, okay, so Zycon was a Mauser brand.
Mm-hmm.
So they had them made by someone in Asia. The question is, I've never really tried, but someone could probably figure out who made them.
Well, I don't have time myself. I'm pretty sure you're busy until next Sunday.
Yeah. I really like the Synergy caps we use, so I don't really have any problem. They're even great in guitars, like for tone caps.
I need to talk to you offline about trying some Synergies. I had some blue ones that someone involved in Synergy sent me to try, and I've used them, and they sound fine, absolutely fine. But I'm comparing them to other really good caps.
Yeah.
For me to know if they have a sound, I would have to use all Synergy in the amp and everything on a switch. All Synergy versus 1813, all Synergy versus 150, and so
they sound different. They sound different than the, say 150s for sure. They're just very organic sounding and very. There's just something kind of rich and nice about them.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm not disparaging them or saying that they're cork sniffery, but for me to recommend a $7 capacitor over a $2 capacitor, especially when an amp may need 20 of them, I need to know that the client's really getting that. So I need to make that determination for myself. But
I think they're the closest thing available to original Philips mustard caps.
See, I haven't tried the yellow Synergies. I've tried the blue.
Yeah.
So
So.
I'll talk to you about.
And they are American-made, handmade film foil.
I get why they cost more.
Yeah.
And I get why Jupiters cost more. And right now, when I use a Jupiter, it's because the client really wants it to be red, and he's willing to pay that much. But typically, that's an old tweed thing with like 6 caps. It's not that big a deal for me to make a change and recommend them strongly.
I think they even work well in Fenders. I mean, I think they work well. Period. I think
I'll be trying them. I'm curious to try them. I see the benefit potentially. There are places in circuits where capacitor material matters a lot. Yeah. In certain circuits, and places where it doesn't matter at all. You can use almost anything. But when it does matter, and where it does matter, matters a hell of a lot. Like that 69 Deluxe Reverb I put up on the channel yesterday, where I put back in the .02 ceramic disc cap for the V2B coupling cap. That ceramic disc in those old 6465 AB763s makes a huge difference in the sound, and part of it is that it is slightly microphonic. And you put a film in there, it's better, but it's not the same. And when you play the amp and you get that kind of bounce back from everything happening, real technical term, bounce back. Anyway, this is me talking about stuff.
I always said a Fender blackface style circuit. I always absolutely use ceramic treble caps. I'm not one in a Fender to change something to a silver mica.
No,
I do not think they sound like Fenders then. Yes, they're still clean, and yes, it's a sound, but I really like the ceramic sound for a treble cap in a Fender.
Yeah. Well, this is a 1
562 series,
562 1 kilovolt. This is the 1K that I use at the input of the phase inverter. But yeah, I've got 250 picofarads here. By the way, I was glad to hear you say picofarad in the video, because I've always said picofarad, and I've been corrected so many times that it's picofarad. And it is correct.
Picofarad?
Yeah, it is correct to say picofarad.
I would say picofarad. I don't know.
I don't like the sound of pico. I mean, it's fine in Spanish, pico de gallo, whatever. But in English, it always sounds pico. It's just a weird thing to me. So I heard you say picofarad in the video. I'm like, yes. Let's see. Hey, Brad, just made it here. Real quick, Kelly Peterson. Yeah, 70s MPEG V4s are great. Extremely heavy. Ugh. Keith Richards, just remember he had roadies, because Keith Richards could, at his best, could never have picked one up.
They're hard on tubes.
Yeah. And they run the screens way too high. I've got some on my channel. Look, and there's a Zener trick where you can knock down the screen so you don't lose tubes. Max Carton Guitar. When are we going to see a tube head with built-in IRs now with the IRX out? It seems like the next step.
From me, yeah, maybe we'll see. It already exists from Sir with the Pete Thorne's PT15 amp.
Yeah.
So that already exists, and a few other companies have it, but yeah. Yeah.
I think
there'll be future products that are, based off some of the tech that went in the IRX.
This is something that I've been watching from afar, because in Memphis we don't have a lot of guys doing kind of the LA stuff with a lot of IRs and stuff. People tend to this is my super reverb. I use it for big gigs. This is my deluxe reverb. I use it for everything else.
Proper.
And I would love to be in the world of which IR thing sounds best, and people are always asking me about the aux box versus this and that, and I always say I don't know. I have suspicions, but I would call John, I would call Dave, and find out if a client needed one. I'd say what's the best one to get and why, and maybe someone here will be asking about that. But again, it's like we've said none of us know everything. We just happen to have a lot of handy phone numbers when necessary. So if a client needed to do that rig, Dave builds rigs at that level. I'd call him and ask him to fill in the blanks in fill in the gaps in my own knowledge. The Axe Forever says, you mentioned Bruce Egnater earlier. The first guitar amp I saw with a toroidal transformer was an Egnater. I'd love your thoughts on those transformers, efficient, reliable, etc.
Yeah, I mean, they're not widely used in guitar amps. Some companies have used those over time. Bruce used it in the first TOL 100 head. Laney used it also in the, I know for sure in the VH head, the VH series, VH, whatever they called it, series head. I know that had it. I think maybe some of the other models had it too.
Yeah, I know John used them for a while. Maybe he still does in some stuff, but he also had some problems with getting the right orientation because they would change from batch to batch, and he'd have to find the new magic place for it to be in the chassis.
Yeah, you spin the transformer until the hum. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they worked fine, to be honest. I mean, do they sound different, the power transformer? I don't know. Some people say they do.
I think it depends on. I think one of the, if I can interject, I think one of the things is that they tend to be used in preamps more than full amplifiers. Yeah. And when you're judging the sound of a preamp with a toroid versus, say, the same preamp in a full amplifier with standard iron, you're not getting the current draw of the output tubes in a preamp. So that voltage out of the toroid is very stable in a preamp by itself, whereas it's changing it all the time in the full amp. So you're not really comparing apples to apples, even though it looks like the difference is a toroid versus something else.
Yeah. Is it quieter or better than an amp? I don't necessarily think so. I mean,
it fit in one or two rack units, which is why people started to use it back in
a preamp. I understand the reasoning.
Yeah. All right. Here's one from Zach Smirex. Question for Dave. What is your opinion on big multi 3+ channel amps, which has many switches like Engel or Mesa Boogie amps? I prefer the single channel approach, to be honest.
Well, if I had it my way, I would use a single channel non-master volume amplifier. But the reality is that's just not the way people do things these days. I think you're a better player if you can cope with one channel on an amp and get all your sounds out of your guitar and your volume changes. And you go see a player like Michael Landau or something play, and it's all about kind of one amp. Mm-hmm. And volume changes and pedal changes and things, that pedal boosts it a little bit more. That one doesn't. Changes the volume of the guitar, pickup selection. I think that's a valuable lesson that a lot of young players don't have anymore. It's a lost art.
Yeah. I said in a previous
I almost want to
stream,
lock them in a room. Or lock them in a room. Here's a one-channel amp. Here's a guitar with 3 pickups. Figure out all the sounds you can get.
Yeah. I said in a previous stream that rather than having a multi-channel changing amp, and to do it well is very expensive, I'd rather have two or three, if necessary, individual amps. Like if I were gigging today on the stages we play today, and I had a deluxe reverb for cleans, and let's say you're JJ Jr. for the rest of it, and then a handful of pedals and an ABY box, there's my channel changing. I'm literally changing amps. I could run the wah raw into the. I could run the wah into the JJ. I could run the delay and chorus into the Fender. Or I've also shown when I did the Runt 50 video of yours, that while no, it's not channel changing, you could use an AB box and do that. But also your overdrive channel, your lead channel on that has a great clean, and people don't explore that with any good Marshall or Marshall variant. Let's say that, which yours is. It should start, unless it's one of the ones with a 5 nanofarad bright cap, it should start with a fundamentally good clean sound, which is essentially Tweed Bassman, and then go from there. And yours does. You could gig your entire night on the Runt 50, dirty channel turned down with a pedal for overdrive if you needed to. And that could be your small rig, and your big rig, use that in a super reverb, so the super reverbs are clean, and then you turn the gain up on the Runt 50. Mm-hmm. John John Suhr, for those who don't know, he does great multi-channel 100-watt heads. They cost more than a deluxe reverb and a JJ Junior. You know, you get what you pay for, or you get something that promises to do the same thing for $1,200, and it doesn't, and it won't, and it can't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, our B100 Deluxe is a $4,000 amplifier. I mean, yeah, will it do a whole bunch of things? Yes, it'll do a whole bunch of stuff. Does it have too many switches for me? Maybe, you know, but because I like one kind of specific thing, and you know, but that's why I make multiple different amps. Our Dirty Shirley amp is a single channel amp.
I've had the BE100N. It is a great amplifier, but for a lot of players, it'd be option paralysis.
Yeah. So again, it comes back to what are your needs? What kind of player are you? What kind of music are you playing? All of this comes into play. So I try to make amps for a variety of different people.
David Pekarski says, thoughts on the Selmer treble and bass. He was thinking about grabbing an old one, but doesn't know how fundamentally different it'd be from an old Bassman AB165. I've not played the Selmer treble and bass. So, Dave?
Oh, I have. It depends on exactly which era Selmer treble and bass. I mean, it's very different from a AB165. It's not. I mean, I don't know if I totally love the Selmers. I've heard some that I really kind of like, but they are sort of like a Fender style circuit with more of an English sort of power section. They're not all that great, though. I mean, you know, you might be better off just with getting a drip edge Bassman, like you said.
I think it's if you were looking at the God amps of all time, the AB165 with a few little tweaks is up there. And if you needed to have one amp that could cover everything, in my experience, it'd be that, or maybe Dave's 6850 watt Plexi. Those are the two amps that can do a Van Halen record one night, and they could do Wes Montgomery the next. Here's an interesting one from Otto von Fledermaus. How will guitar amps evolve in future, in your view? What's the next step in guitar amps, in your opinion? Thanks.
I'm not really sure there really has been, we came out with this IRX pedal. Okay, so maybe that has merged, the simplicity of a tube amp, but in a format that's modern for the modern sort of direct guitar player. But the whole idea of that product was simplicity. How fast can you get a sound? Mm-hmm. The most infuriating thing about a modeler, well, not that much of a fan of the sounds, but is the pages and menus and the learning curve and, oh, hey, it's not connecting to my computer now. Why isn't it connecting today to my computer? Oh, it's a bad USB cable? Okay. Well, all I want to do is change the gain. Wait, where do you do that? Okay. Yeah. Some of them are easier than others to do things like that. Or, someone said it really well. They set up their modeler. They can get it sounding pleasing to them. They get everything dialed in, and they go to the gig and realize it's all wrong. And then they can't change it fast enough.
Yeah.
They can't make the changes quickly for the situation they're in. And, they say it's fine and dandy if you're going to do a big show and you're on a big tour and everything can get dialed in for the exact set you're playing all the time, and everything, you have time and rehearsals and everything to dial it all in. But, if you're playing, at the bar in a local cover band, using a modeler is rough. It's
a lot of guys never get in there and figure out how it works. They're just using presets.
Yeah,
and
those presets generally aren't that great.
Yeah.
And, with this, you literally, I have a pedal board. Okay. I integrate this on my pedal board now. I already have my favorite effects that I've used for years. I have my Strymons or whatever pedals you du jour is your thing. I can integrate this into my system and be up and running in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I
think that's a great thing for right now. I think eventually it's gonna be like, imagine the HX Stomp thing. That sounds great. We're not there yet. It sounds great. It does everything you want, and there's a real easy to use app that works on everybody's phone. And you're like, hey, this is really intuitive. The same thought goes into making that stuff that goes into making iTunes back when iTunes was good. We're not there yet, because to get really good sounds out of the modelers that exist, you have to learn computer programming, and you have to be interested in that kind of stuff. And you have to know how it all translates to sound, and not many people do. Like John Cordy does a really great job of that, but a lot of guys I've heard using the same gear he does, you can't tell any difference between his Les Paul and his Telecaster because it's all so saturated with so much delay and stuff on there. There's no individuality. It becomes a very homogenized thing. It's like Stevie Wonder did amazing things with synthesizers in 1974. And I have not heard anything amazing done with synthesizers done since about 1990, even though the ability of the synthesis is exponentially greater. It's so much harder to get in there and fiddle with stuff. So people don't tend to innovate because it sounds all right. I'll just use this. Here's an angel pad.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that people will get tired of the sameness of the current Spotify top 10 stuff, because it's predictable and repetitive. This is not old man shouting at clouds. Just a lot of it's just not interesting from a harmonic or melodic or rhythmic sense, and people will get sick of it, and people will maybe be punk Mach 2. We're like, hey, I don't need to have all that. Let's do it. I don't care whether it's guitar. I don't care whether it's little beep boops they make on their phone or whether it's ukulele orchestras. But something needs to change in music, and I'm interested to see what it'll be. Here's Ben Briard probably. Super chat, thank you. Dave, congrats on the IRX release. How can I get one in an ADA MP1 color scheme? The kid in me wants this.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
Well, thanks for the super chat anyway. But I will point out, Ben, if you don't ever intend to sell it, and why would you need to, right? Get one, and then they make markers and paint pens so you can go to town. Just
please don't.
Matthew,
why'd you give him that idea?
Matthew D'Alessandro, local Hayseed 3015 has popped up for sale. Any thoughts, experience? Let me take this one. They're absolute shit show, garbage fests. The terminal strips are all riveted to the chassis, and all these grounds are made with rivets, and all the rivets come loose and rattly, and then all your grounds are connecting and disconnecting and connecting and disconnecting because the rivets are loose. On my Facebook,
what could go wrong?
On my Facebook page, before I started doing everything on YouTube, I show one and fixed it. The trouble is, it was a very expensive fix to rebuild the entire thing correctly with an actual ground scheme. And at the end of the day, he had a fantastic amp that said Hayseed. So Hayseed got the credit if anyone played it and heard it. They were the darlings of all the forums about 15, 20 years ago, but they're junk. Almost go to any guitar center, any guitar store, and buy an AC-15 or AC-30 custom and have an infinitely better amp for a lot less money that's going to work every time. So, unless you disagree, Mr. Friedman.
I've never even worked on one, so I don't know.
You don't want to. Life is already short enough.
Good. Yeah.
Let's see. Clyde's got one for you. It says, Dave, you've made some of my fave guitar signatures. Who do you really want to make a signature amp for the most?
I always wanted to do something for Jimmy Page.
Yeah, Mitch has already done that. Sorry, man.
Yeah, I know. So, you know.
Have you had one of those Sundragons in?
No, I actually have never even played through one. I kind of wanted one when they first came out. I was like, I love Supro amps, so, you know, that was another amp that I really like.
Yeah, I like the old Supros and what Mitch is doing, but the current stuff. Anyway, who else do you want to do besides Page?
Well, Eddie Van Halen would have been nice, but that was kind of that didn't happen. Man, I've worked with some of my favorite people, so Signature, I don't know anymore. I don't know, but Signature stuff,
Yeah, I gotta say, and this is no disrespect to you, or to it's right there. Sorry, I'm not in the heavy metal world. Sorry, Jake E. Lee. No disrespect to Jake E. Lee. I know you guys are buds, but I was surprised that Signature came out because my perspective was like, oh, that was the guy on like the Bark of the Moon thing, and he just did that one thing and then hasn't been prominent since. I'm just being honest. I was surprised by that, and then I was watching so many players get excited about this. So obviously,
it's an interesting
there was something that I missed.
There.
I missed out on this. This is not me judging that guy.
Well,
I was like, okay,
it was an interesting phenomenon. He, as a guitar player, was very interesting in what he did and the riffs he wrote and the songs he wrote. Very interesting guitar player that, man, put a stamp on stuff that was just no one has forgotten. And maybe the fact he disappeared was good, for a lot of years. I remember Fender told me, my friend at Fender told me, he goes, or Charvel Fender, said, yeah, when we did that guitar, we were like, yeah, okay, we're going to make this cool guitar. And they didn't realize how well it would sell. So, and he warned me, he goes, you're going to sell a lot of those. And so we did a 100-watt version that was a limited run, but still to this day, people want the 100-watt ones. And we don't make them. We just said, here's 200, we made them, and that's it. But then we came up with the 20 because we wanted to continue that. And the 20, even though it's his signature, is a pretty versatile amp for a lot of different people. I've seen people do like really classic rocky kind of stuff with it, and it sounds great for that. So it can get a lot of sounds, and I don't know what it is, but those riffs are iconic, and people have this real attachment as one. There wasn't many guitar greats. There's a lot of great guitar players.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't many from that era that, in the top 5, kind of top 10, let's say. And he was one of those. He was in that top echelon.
That just wasn't my world at the time. So
because his guitar playing was unique. It had a sound, and it wasn't a generic hard rock thing. Like his riffs were kind of iconic.
It sounds like I need to go back and listen.
Along with like, the likes of, Eddie Van Halen, or along the likes of Warren DeMartini, who's an amazing guitar player, and you had your George Lynch's. I'm just talking this era guitar players. And you had your Jake E. Lees, and you had your Randy Rhoads, and there was other great players, John Sykes and some other people, but there wasn't that many in the top echelon that were really had a distinct individual tone and sound. And
Nick Mars.
And no, that's the thing. I mean, not to we know that, but he didn't really have that sound, or some of the other bands. Those guitar players put a mark, and has stayed forever.
Well, I'm gonna go back and listen to what Jake did. He had
Ozzy
stuff. And he had Badlands, right?
Badlands is a more blues-based.
I mostly know of him through reading interviews with him in Guitar Player and Guitar World back in the day. So I need to go back and listen to this, because those articles came out at the time when to listen to an album you had to go buy the thing.
Yeah,
and as a $10 to $20 risk. Now I can listen to it. If I like it, then I'll buy it.
I mean, we sold scads of these 20
Yeah, I
watts
saw
so
people
far,
going
you know,
nuts
like,
about it, and I was like,
yeah.
I have clearly missed out on something that's very real here. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And like, Jake, if you see this, I am not disparaging you. I was 11 or 12 when Bark at the Moon came out, so it was not my world. Other than everyone was talking about the video because Ozzy looked like a werewolf. So that was my awareness.
Well, see, I have there's a unpopular opinion. I actually think Jake was Ozzy's best guitar player, and that pisses people off sometimes. But some people agree with me.
I thought
although Randy Rhoads was an amazing guitar player.
I thought Zakk Wylde was such an unusual choice that he instantly stood out because we just had Whitesnake with the actual guys on the record, and then the Vivian Campbell and Adrian. Anyway, that pairing, and then it turned into Vi, and we had all these guys with Kramer guitars and choruses, and you could hear the tri-stereo happening and all this stuff. And then Ozzy came out with Zakk Wylde, and the songwriting improved with Zakk, and the pinch harmonics and the vibrato, and not a lot else except some wah and a couple of cool effects used as effects, but they were off most of the time. It was like, hey, that sounds like Slash times 10. You know, when he first came out, that was really impressive to me. But again, that could be the age that I was when that came out, because I was like 17.
I wasn't that into Zakk. I mean, Zack's a friend. I love Zakk, but I wasn't really that into Ozzy. Was sort of, to me, Ozzy was ruined when Zakk came. That's just my opinion.
See, I thought Ozzy got more interesting, but we're in different mindsets, different times of our life. Maybe what I was hearing was like the stuff like No More Tears, where it was doing stuff kind of harmonically like
that's a good
Queen
song.
was doing.
You know, it's a great. I mean, that's a great song. Okay, you know, I'll give it some. It just his playing never, although he's a great player, it never struck me as. It didn't necessarily stand out to me. The guitar tone didn't stand out to me. Nothing stood out to me.
That's why this is fun, and there's so many flavors of ice cream.
Yeah.
Dave's only here for the rest of this hour. Then you guys got me another hour. So I'm going to try to zip through and find some good questions for him. Jimmy Mack, we cannot give you advice on wiring a Mojo tone kit because we don't know where you're starting from or where you need to end up. We would need a crystal ball for that. I don't mean to be rude. It's just so hard to know.
You're working them on.
Let's see. Trying to get any good questions that only Dave can answer. People talking about what they're running, and they're running multiple amps like I'm talking about. All right, here's one from Chris Butler. Christopher Butler. Is there a reliable alternative brand of switching channel amps to a Boogie Mark series that can do the Boogie saturated lead sounds? So, Dave?
Okay. Which Mark series?
Yeah. I think you would probably be talking about the Mark II C Plus, maybe.
Well, 2C Plus is probably the best amp they ever made.
Yeah, they should have stopped.
They should have stopped. I always say that the older era Mesas were also just better built and a little bit,
but not well built, just better built. Tack soldered everything, including the tube sockets and tantalums everywhere. But yeah, the Mark I and the SOB, if you fix the stupid master volume and that weird thing in the phase inverter on the SOB, up to the Mark II, those are good.
Yeah, yeah. That does that sound exactly. I don't know of anything that is exactly that.
I tell you, if I were to add a 2 picofarad cap to ground off the wiper of actually off the grid of the of V2 on this AB165 Bassman, so you get that Mesa saturation because it's rolling off all the ultra highs, and turn that gain up. It's pretty much the same thing. The gain structure is different, but it is basically just a Fender channel run into some more gain stages, and then how you shape that a little bit. I don't think the Mark II is that amazing. It's just that they were one of the first ones to do it. Being along similar veins,
I keep thinking I should make a proper Mark circuit.
Yeah, they should, and they should. You should, because then it wouldn't catch on fire. Like Trainwreck did the same idea, but they did not roll off any highs or attenuate at all. It's on the verge of instability, and it's a really raw sound, and it's cool. Dumble took the same topology and also smoothed it out and added an additional tone stack to it. But those two and the Mesa Mark II series are all starting from the Fender thing and then just adding more gain to the standard Fender thing. They're all different colors of the same basic idea, and that's part of the fun of this too. But yeah, you should totally make a Mark II C+ without the pitfalls before Gibson sues you.
Can't sue me for that.
Not yet.
I just can't call it something.
Right. Yeah. And let's see. Maybe I need to do one of those things where I have questions at the beginning for questions. Here's one. Ricardo Carrillo. Hey, Dave, just got my IRX custom shop. Works great and sounds killer, but will you ever make it software for older Mac versions than 10.15?
Probably not. 10.15, Jesus, that's quite old.
Does it work on iPads or iPhones too?
No.
Okay.
No. 10.15, Jesus.
Yeah,
What era was that?
Let's see. I'm on 14 right now on mine. So that would be like
I'm behind. I'm on 11.79, but
yeah.
I mean, that's really old. It's hard. The problem is it's hard to do software that isn't, that keeps up with the current thing. So at some point in time, you have to make a cutoff. You can't, hey, I got a PC that runs XP still. Can you make software that works for that? No.
Ricardo, what you could do, if this is really that crucial, and if you don't have the money to get another computer, see if there is a version, if your version of the Mac OS can run an emulation of the PC, because a lot, I think 10.15 Macs can run an emulated Windows, and then you could use the Windows version of the app probably. Because
maybe, but I think we don't support, yeah, that might work. I'm not sure.
It might, but yeah, at some point things get obsolete, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if you're in Dave's position, you want to say, hey, I have to make it work on the current stuff because that's going to be where they're at for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably buy a very cheap MacBook Air of some era that's really cheap for $500 maybe.
You can get a new refurb one from like about $700, and you could
get probably even a slightly older one for $5 or something.
Yeah.
So I know I have one of my older ones that's sitting here that I use a lot for software because it still has regular old USB ports on it.
I've got the big Pro 16 here, and it's running the setup with the cameras and everything, and I can detach it fairly easily, but it's still the brain. I'm thinking about later in the year getting a little Air just to be able to go to the coffee shop.
I got the 15-inch Air.
You got that?
The black one. It really looks cool. That's actually a really great computer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The new Airs are phenomenal. What you get for the money is
fast,
scary.
15-inch one.
Yeah, I've got the 16 Pro in space gray, but it's staggering. I can do all the 4K videos like that, and my old computer used to take 30 minutes to boot.
Crazy, right?
Let's see, a fun one before we let you go. Wallpaper music.
Hey, wait, this is funny. Wes Chilton said, "This is the problem with digital stuff."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about your operating system for your old Plexi, do you?
It's like what I said about deluxe reverbs. You're not have to worry about if the new one's got Bluetooth. It's still a deluxe reverb. Please discuss pros and cons of pre/post phase inverter master volumes. My favorite amp is pre-phase inverter master volume, late 70s JMP 2204, 50-watt master volume.
You want to go, or you want me to go?
I'll start, but not fully answer. I think, first of all, and Dave's probably going to say this, it depends how much preamp gain you have. If you have an amp with a lot of preamp gain, 2203 or higher, typically you're going to want to run that power section kind of clean, in which case it doesn't matter as much. In a Plexi kind of thing, an AC30 kind of thing, J1045 kind of thing, a lot of what we perceive as preamp sound is also including the phase inverter. And if you put a pre-phase inverter master volume, as you turn it down, your sound cleans up. You can see that on the Top Hat video I did not too long ago. And on that Marshall Origin series, you turn that master volume down, you lose all your Marshall gain. Yeah. So if you have an amp where a large part of the overdrive character is coming from the phase inverter, you want a post. If you have a Tweak 2204, you've got a Soldano, you've got a BE 100, you can do that because there's enough character to the preamp itself that the output section can stay clean and the sound will be much the same.
Now, the problems with the post phase inverter master is it takes out the negative feedback loop. Now, if you have very little negative feedback anyway in the amplifier, and you tend to run your presence on 10 anyway, and you run it really hot, might not make that much of a difference. Now, not all post phase inverter masters are created equally either. The other problem with the post-phase inverter master, if you tell me, hey, I want to put an effects loop in this amp. Now, that's not going to work now. Because if you're deriving your distortion from distorting the phase inverter, the loop is before the phase inverter, and then you are going to be distorting your effects.
I would argue with that to a degree. The phase inverter is part of the distortion. It's not the whole thing. So you will only be adding a little bit of hair to your delays and stuff there. But your point's valid.
But it sounds, generally people say it sounds like shit.
Well, I tell people, do you want to put the cathedral in the amp or the amp in the cathedral? Sometimes
it depends on how hard you're driving this amp too. So if it's cleaner on the front end, and if you have it set clean on the front end or relatively clean, you can get away with a loop with the post-phase master because you're not driving anything really hard. But let's say it's a Marshall and you want to drive it hard. That's going to sound awful.
But if you have a pre-phase inverter master volume and the master volume is before the effects loop, then all your effects levels change as you turn the master volume down. I'm not saying that's what Dave is saying to do, but there are always considerations.
Yeah.
I would say that if you really need the sound of a cranked Plexi, don't have any effects loop. You can always add effects. Yeah, fry it or just run up the mic itself off your cab into the stuff and then into a little PA, and there's your wet.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you want the cathedral in the amp or the amp at the cathedral. You can do that in post, which is what people have done in the studio for decades. But you can do that on stage now if you're that serious about it. But in a lot of amps, you don't need any effects loop at all. Deluxe reverb, what's the freaking point? That the damn thing stays clean. As far as the collapsing negative feedback loop, I think you have to scale your expectations. And I'm not telling Dave this. Dave knows all this. I'm saying this to everyone out there. If you expect the master volume to make your 50-watt Marshall usable at a small club, it will. It'll be as loud as a 20-watt amp. It'll still be loud, but it's not going to get you evicted or lose you the gig. And that'll be fine. But if you turn it down to actual bedroom level, yeah, the negative feedback's collapsed. The response is going to be to shit. You'll still hear sound. You can practice with it. It's not going to sound great. It cannot sound great. The physics of the speaker won't, at that low volume, won't allow it to sound great. There is a time and place for everything. And if you need that same rig at practice, Dave's IRX, you can use it on the gig and you can use it at practice because IR's headphones, no one will hear you but you and God. On that note, having just plugged his IRX again, which I've not actually heard, so it was a theoretical plug based on knowledge, knowing Dave and knowing his other products. I think this has been 2 hours with Dave, and I think we should all thank him very much and go to his channels, Tone Talk and Friedman Amps, and like and subscribe. And thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah. Sorry I couldn't stay longer.
Well, we'll have to do it again someday. Yeah. All right, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to take another 7-minute interruption. We'll all say goodbye to Mr. Friedman. And when we come back, I'll start trying to get through the rest of the questions and all that fun stuff. And we'll just have 1 hour of the regular boring me show. See you in a little bit, guys. Thanks, Dave.
See you later. Bye.
All right, let's end that intermission a little bit early. That was fun that Dave was here. So let me show you some things that just arrived. So some trim pots to finish up Scott Wilcox's Immaculate 67 Bassman. These have been in the mail system for like 5 days. With no status updates, they finally arrived. And some bits and bobs to go on his RS-02T RevStar. And some preamp tubes for the couple of for that deluxe, the 69 Deluxe and the 66 Deluxe that are here. 65 Deluxe, the 69 and the 65. So that'll be good. And real quick before we get into more questions, speaking of Scott Wilcox, you'll get to hear more of this RevStar and the changes I've made to it soon. He sent me some Kinmans to put in here, and they're in. And the Kinmans came with black P90 covers. He's ordered some creams that'll be here soon. And he wanted to know how the guitar would look with the black covers and no pick guard. And it looks like this. Or it could look like this. And then when the creams arrive, he can make the final choice of how he wants the guitar to come home. And he could change them out himself. It's easy to put the pick guard on and off, and it's easy to change the pickup covers pretty easy, without too much fuss, as long as you measure where the heights are. But I look forward to you guys getting to hear this, new knobs and everything. And all those nasty phased positions are gone. It's frustrating, people criticizing that video for being biased because the guy playing the guitar clearly did not like some of the positions and the phase things, and so he played differently. I think it's very important when a pro guitarist picks up a guitar and is like, what the fuck is this? Anyway, Edge of Eternity, sorry Dave had to go. Dave's not here, man. Dave's not here. The vintage sound, I think, is that thing that I put on the amps under 1,000 that I saw on Reverb. That was such a shit show, but I could be mistaken. Sorry about that. Sorry about some of the questions for Dave. He's not here anymore. Yeah, Friedman, Jimmy Page would be great. But if you want a page based on his old Supro, look up Sun Dragon amps. That's done by my buddy Mitch Colby, who does Colby amps and Park, and did an authorized reissue of the actual Supro in conjunction with Mr. Page. And he did all these limited edition ones with new old stock everything, which were signed and terribly, terribly expensive, but really great. But he also has a production line, which are phenomenal as well. Bark with the Moon with 9th grade for K major. I guess we were about the same age. But in 8th, 9th grade, when that came out, the guys listening to that were the guys smoking in the parking lot on the hoods of their Camaros who wanted to beat me up. So, you know, funny how that colors your perception of things. Hey, Josh, I don't know whether Dave does, but I love the Black Crowes, especially sometimes Salvation and that era. I think the sounds are great. And one of the Sleeper records, Winter something, I can't remember the name of it. Back when I bought albums and I had the art, I remembered all the titles very well. But that Black Crowes, it's white and Winter something. Anyway, my buddy Luther was in the band on that. I think Luther Dickinson, and I think that record sounds phenomenal. I think just beautiful guitar playing and sounds on that. You know, I'm a big Stones fan with an asterisk in that I really like Exile and Sticky Fingers and a little bit of the stuff before. But after that, once I got into disco, nothing. I think the Black Crowes really got the best of what the Stones were doing and some of the best of what Zeppelin was doing when they weren't quite doing the hard rock thing, but doing the more, I won't say more interesting to me, but more varied stuff. I think Black Crowes took both those ideas and ran with it very well without being derivative. The first album is a little bit, you can definitely tell who their influences were, but they were 20 years old. Davis Phillips loves his Jakey Lee 100. I don't blame you one bit. From what I've heard of it, it is a very, very good sounding, well-built variation on a JCM 800 2203, and that's one of the great amps of all time. Yeah, K Major, yeah. Zach definitely went overboard with the pinch harmonics at some point, but I think when he first came out with that sped up country pentatonic stuff, as opposed to all the sweep arpeggios we were being exposed to from other metal guys, I thought it was really fresh when it came out. Thank you, David Pekarsky. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun thing. Technical difficulties. I'm going to be doing this at least once a month, or I can't guarantee it'll always be on the. I just sounded very country there. I can't guarantee it'll always be on the first Saturday of the month. I'll try to. I've got some good ones already signed up. I need to firm up next month's guest, and I've got a great guy for December. I've got some guys lined up past that. And this coming Thursday night, I'll be on a guest on Jason Tong's channel, Head First Amplification. Really nice guy, really knowledgeable Australian guy. I have so many Australian friends. What's up with that? It's not culturally. There's not much difference between Australia and this part of Tennessee. But anyway, yeah, I'll be on Head First Amplifications next Thursday night. I think 7 or 8 p.m. Central Time in America. So 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon for Jason. But I'll put a link to that in the description of this when I'm done, and I'll post that on my channel. So everyone who likes this kind of thing, be sure to join us Thursday night. Let's see. Ken asked Dave now. I'm not a huge fan of Bogners. I find that they are asking, some of the best models are asking way too much of output tubes, which it's just very hard on them. I don't think the sounds are particularly fantastic. And the very popular Shivas relied, the later models, at least most of the ones in production, used a switch mode power supply for the 12-volt DC stuff that is no longer made, and Bogner does not have a suitable replacement for it. Gringo Pig, we say solder rather than solder because it is a variation. America and England have very different relationships historically with France, and so as the Napoleonic Wars took place, and even before that, the English would very much intentionally mispronounce French words, and the Americans, up through the end of the War of 1812, were very much pro-France because you guys were not exactly our friends at the time. And so we kept a lot of the French pronunciations, though solder has softened from the original French to become the American solder. Solder is started off as an intentional mispronunciation of the French. That's very much the case with a lot of French words in British English and American English. It's always, odd to say American English versus English English. It's like salmon, solder, salmon. You guys can say Solomon all you wish. I don't think anyone actually says that over there. It's odd, the things, and it's not making fun of the Brits, but it's odd that you'll say tomato. But if you say potato, you want to smack someone. I keep hitting the wrong button. Sorry there. Thank you, David. Let's see. Yeah, Scott C. I'm on Mac version 14 on Mac OS myself. Hey, Gigman Drew. How do you safely pull the chassis out of your DSL-40 CR? I don't recall. I don't recall whether that model has the chassis attached to the rear panel, in which case you lay it face down and remove the screws on the side, and then the whole panel comes off. You move the chassis to the side, and then you remove the rear panel, or whether you move the rear panel and then there are screws from the top or sides of the chassis. Sorry. If I saw it in front of me, I could tell you instantly. In fact, let me look it up real quick. I'll tell you. I could do that for you. Since you had to wait and you missed Dave. I do try to answer all the questions possible. But invariably never get to all of them. Let's see if I can get a picture showing how it's built. All right, that's one with that nasty full rear panel. So take off the rear panel first. Don't allow my location, Guitar Center. Thank you very much. All right, and then all right, so lay the DSL-40 face down on a bench or a table with a towel if necessary. Remove the rear cover. It's going to be a lot of screws. The whole thing just pops up. If it's stuck, it's going to have might have some adhesive strips. Just be patient. Pull gently. It'll come up. Once that's done, with the amp still down, there are 4 screws on top, what would be the top of the chassis, top of the cabinet. Unscrew those. Make sure that if they're large, that use a number 3 bit. If a number 3 doesn't fit, then use a number 2. Unscrew those by hand. When you do undo the last 2, be sure you're kind of clamping the chassis to the top of the cabinet while you remove those last screws. If you're at all worried about this, about things falling over and hitting, remove the output tubes before you do this. And then the chassis just pulls straight up. If it can bind on the sides sometimes because of excess Tolex, that's just part of it. But it should slide out, and then you can remove it, do the work, and you put it back. But yeah, when I'm doing that style, I always remove and put the chassis back with the amp laying on its face so that everything's going straight down and not going to drop down so the tubes and such won't smash on the speakers. Hope that is clear. I think the 10.4 Max can run Windows or Windows emulation, in which case you might be able to get away with the Windows version of that software. Let's see. Let's see. More questions. Sorry, everyone's having so much fun with the concept of upgrading and downloading patches for their 6L6s, which is good. I'm glad that everyone's having a good time in the chat. Let's see. Logging into your twin sounds like a felony. Sounds like one of those movies you had to stay up late to watch when I was a kid. All right, so I'm now when Dave was leaving. So then the coming back from break now, or I'm just actually still in the break from what you guys are saying. I'm glad that everyone enjoyed having Dave here. Apparently, people were expecting him to be very different than he is. He is exactly as I've always found him. He's been very gracious, very helpful, very giving of his time. It's nice when I can reach out to these guys. You know, if I have a question about something, I know who to call. And the people I know who are very successful in this field tend to be very nice people and interested in talking about the craft and the art and the science of everything. Hey, Brad, you want to come on? let's see. I'm trying to get through the things. Brad, you want to jump in on this? If you're, I don't know if you're set up with your camera. Of the stock speakers for the C1 AC15 C1, cream, green, and blue are all great choices. I'll get Brad in here. You need to play them and see which ones you like the sounds of. I send Brad a link. Let's see here. Messenger. If I were to choose one, I think the blue is the traditional choice and hard to go wrong with once it breaks in. But I'm a big fan of the creamback as well. Let's see. There it goes. But you know, it's all personal preference. So you got to figure out what you like. Yeah. Now those guys that wanted to beat you up are asking you to fix their apps. I do want to reiterate that those guys wanted to beat me up in 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade. And then I came back the summer, the beginning of 10th grade, and I had grown a foot. So those guys suddenly lost their interest in trying to beat me up. It's funny how people who like to beat people up like smaller people to do that too. But I tried to get them to take me up on their previous offer. They declined. Gam Jam says Sticky Fingers was the Stones' best. No. Exile, man. Sticky Fingers was only their second best. I've not tried the old Soviet 6P14P, I don't think, Fastback 1967. I've used some of the Soviet versions of the 7189, which are great. Mad Max says Luther Dickinson is amazing. Any tips on getting the Crow's sound in terms of amps so that the neighbors won't have to listen to? Well, yeah, you can get Friedman's new IRX pedal, and that'll actually would do a fantastic job in terms of a traditional amp. Any 20-watt amp that floats your boat, those guys would sound like that through any 20-watt amp. You could do it with a Princeton and an overdrive pedal. You could do it with a AC15. You could do it with a 5B3 Twin Deluxe or one of those Victoria Ivy Leagues behind me here. There's a lot of ways to do it. Depends on how objectionable your neighbors find you're playing. Dirk Brom, what is the most reliable out-of-the-box high-gain amp? I don't know because I've not tried them all. Once you get to a certain quality level, you can't say that Sir or Friedman or, well, let's limit it to those, are better than each other. There are better and worse ones, but usually there's a correlation between reliability and fewer bells and whistles. So if you get into the realm of Hughes and Kettners, where you have 4 channels and various effects loops and all this stuff, MIDI switches at the same time, every option you add is an opportunity for something to go wrong. I would like to say Jason Tong's Headfirst amps, the new Alto, would be in that list, but I've not played one. I'm just going based on knowing Jace. I would say your best bet with any of them, though, is just to get an amp that does the one thing well. So not a 5150, not a dual rectifier. But if you like those sounds, get a Soldano SLO and take some of that 2K mid-range emphasis out of it. That's easy for a tech to do. Let's see here. Hey, thanks Burke himself. When doing any gain mods to a 2204 circuit, any tips to do or not to do to keep a clean sound when the guitar's volume turns down? Or is that a whole other show? Whew, it can be tricky on a 2204. Because of the gain structure and a very cold clipping stage, which means that when you are not, in fact, clipping that stage because you've turned your guitar volume down, instead of cold clipping, it just sounds cold. I prefer... what's the best way to phrase this? I prefer to redo a 2203 or 2204, not a vintage example of it, but a reissue or whatever, to be a little less what it is and a little more like a higher gain plexi. There are ways to maintain it. If you look at the Friedman stuff, I wish you were here for this. He's changing some dividers, which means that he can keep cathodes different. He doesn't have to do the cathodes the same way. Trying to decide how far down this rabbit hole to go. I think that might be a whole other show. Look at the videos I did on that Randy Rhoads Marshall that came in about a year ago. I go through a lot of stuff you can do in that and show what Marshall did, which was what was good about it, what was not so good about it. But that amp, when it was done, had the response that you're talking about, and it was a very different circuit than a straight JCM 800 2204. So it's complicated, but you got to look at a lot of factors and how they interact with each other. What are my thoughts on train wrecks? They're great. They're kind of difficult to control. Not all players can play them successfully. Not all guitars sound good with them. And the sounds that they do are not for everyone. But if they float your boat, very little else out there does what they do. It's kind of like riding a tiger. You know, it's great. Don't let go. What does that sound? It stopped as soon as I took my headphones off. That's weird. Leland Berg says, solder in England is a derogatory term. Yeah, well, it is a rude thing to say about a lady. Oh. It's really cool in Memphis today. It's in the 50s, or I guess it's in the 60s now outside. So we have all the doors and windows open, so we don't have to have air conditioning. It feels great getting the fresh air in here. The neighbor's mowing the yard. So that's what I was hearing the bleed through the mic, through the headphones. Like, where did that sound come from? Social Living 323. I've stated most of the things I do on those. There are a couple of things I keep to myself, not because I'm hiding. Well, only I have the secret sauce. A couple things are like that because I figured it out. You know, I get to have certain secrets. Other stuff I don't want to put on YouTube because 90% of people trying to do what I do would end up in an amp that no longer works, that can't be fixed. You know, I'm not doing videos for a pool of pre-selected techs with a guaranteed certain level of experience and capability. I'm sticking stuff out there for general public, and I don't want someone to say, oh, if I cut this trace, and then they cut the wrong trace and they fucked up their board. So I discuss the things that almost anyone can do with a high degree of success or high likelihood of success. Hey, Brad, I've sent you an invitation to get on here if you want to jump in. I don't know if you saw that or heard that, but check your messenger. Yeah, JDS. They put the death cap in the old 3 prongs with a 3-position ground switch in case that you were playing it someplace that did not have the ground. I would remove it. It's just a potential point of failure. And if you play a place that doesn't have ground, don't play there because the wiring's not safe. Man, Hal Vac, any thoughts on reliability of 6L6 versus EL34? It's going to depend on the month as to what brands are available right now, let alone what's reliable. But as a characteristic of the type, there's no difference in reliability. Let's see. Hey, Kyle. Good to see you there. For the guys you don't know, Kyle has a very, very popular YouTube channel. Hey, here's Brad. Let me add him in here. Kyle does, seems to be way down the high gain path compared to me. Let's see. Add right. There we go. Hey, Mr. B.
Hey, how you going?
Just fine. Oh, man, you're looking like a serial killer. But
yeah, I do.
Anyway, thanks very much. I'm sorry, I had you wallpaper music of it. Kyle, thanks for joining us. And what speakers are you putting in there? Let's see here. Brad just got back from a long weekend of roading with his Road Warrior mates. Sounds better in authentic Australian. Did you drown any SUVs this time?
No. One of the guys that always destroys stuff didn't come this time, so I'm pretty sure he's just a bad omen and he's not allowed to come anymore. So the biggest problem right now is I've got my GH5S here ready to go and everything. I put in 4 different batteries and they're all dead. So I think my charger's failed.
Is that fun? Yeah.
So now I'm literally on the phone.
Well, we'll forgive it this time, man.
Okay, thank you.
It's not fair when chargers die. You know, we're like, okay, I just need this one thing, and of course that's the thing that fucks up everything else.
It's broken a social contract.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's a question for us. Lawrence Cash, do you have any tips on a quality recap brand or parts kit service of 77 through 83 Bassman 70 head? Mine's a 77. I had it retubed in 96, working maybe time. First of all, there's no parts kits to buy. If you buy kits, yeah, someone's done the work of saying this is what you need, but you pay an awful lot for that. If you're qualified to do the work, you're qualified to look up the schematic and say, all right, they used a 50 microfarad, 50 volt. I'll get a 47 microfarad, 100 volt. Yeah. But if you're doing it at the scale of 1 or 2 amps a year or a decade, just go to tubesandmore.com or go to tubedepot.com or Mojotone. I don't care. They're going to have everything you need. Get what they have, use it. Look at my videos, look at Brad's videos. You'll see that, you know, Brad uses TADs. I find them a little more expensive here in the States than so I use F&Ts and I use MODs. They're all comparable. I use Vishays for the small stuff. I think you do too, Brad, from Mauser. Or where do you get do you get stuff from Mauser, or do you have a different vendor that's good for you there?
So CE Distribution is what I use for the Vishay stuff because for some reason they've
stocking them. Yeah, they started stocking them now. Makes me very happy.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried still though because like Mauser and that are showing some of them are obsolete now. I'm not sure if that's language for we're just not buying them anymore or if they've actually stopped being manufactured. But either way, CE seems to have a wider range and no indication that they're going obsolete. So they're a little bit more expensive from there. But yeah, it's a good way to get 105 degree caps, particularly in the low values for bypass caps and whatever, in the 105 degree range, temperature rating. So I pretty much exclusively use Vishay for the low value stuff. And then Tube Amp Doctor, I order direct from Germany. Because I do pretty large orders, like multiple $1,000s at once. I stock stuff because I have to. You can order stuff per amp. I sort of can't do that because every amp would sit here for 3 months. So that's the main reason I use Tube Amp Doctor. MOD, Tube Amp Doctor seem to be the go-to axials at the moment. I've sort of moved away from F&T because they are like literally 5 times the cost of the TADs. And I haven't had any TAD failures. There is a retailer up here or in Queensland called Evatco. They've got their own brand. I'm not sure who makes them, but I installed some like 10 years ago as a test in one of my amps that just gets used all the time, and they're still fine. And they're like $2 each for like a 22 microfarad for 500 volt axial. So there's plenty of places to get them. Just don't buy Fromel kits because you're just getting bent over.
Yeah. On this similar question, me, myself, and I says, hey, Lyle, would you be willing to do a video series on how to source parts and build a 50-watt plexi? If someone asks me to build one, I'll document it, but I don't do things specifically for the channel, or at least not on that scale. But there's a 76 Super Lead that I rebuilt, 2-3 years ago. Came in, it had just been butchered to death, and I show in that I had a new board custom made to my specs, turret board, fiberglass, put the whole thing in. You can see every part that I chose for that. Every part that I chose for that is available at Mauser and CE. Yeah. Nothing's esoteric. You can watch that video, and again, I don't mean this to be mean, if you're capable of doing this at all, that's really, that and the schematic is all you need to say, okay, I can do that, and that'll work. But I can't build an amp as a demonstration just for the channel. My channel is an offshoot of the primary business, as opposed to a lot of stuff out there where their primary business is YouTube. And I think Brad's exactly the same. Yeah. Hope to God so, because neither of us are pretty. Holy cow, Jeff Mackerlane's here. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really enjoy your videos. In fact, I've been watching Keith's 5-Watt World Keith's videos enough that I'm like this close to like, oh yeah, I suck. I need to do the True Fire course, and you're certainly one of the ones that I would be looking at first. So if you guys don't know Jeff Mackerlane, check out his channel. Phenomenal player, seemingly nice guy. It's amazing.
Can he grow a beard though?
Does he need to, or do I need to? I'm on it. I'm on it.
Well, it looks like you're already down the road a bit.
Yeah, this is 1 week from last time. I guess it's been 2 weeks since the last stream. So yeah.
I can see you with a beard.
I don't. It's like my hair. My hair looks good like this, and my hair looks good when it's really long, or it used to before it turned white. Anything in between is Einstein, and it happens from here too. So I don't get like a distinguished thing. I just get mountain man, gonna go with my sister wives off to my cabin. And so it's not a good look.
So just speaking of 5-Watt World, I haven't really dug into that channel yet. Did that start off as like a small amp, like single-ended amp?
I don't know. I don't know. I've never spoken to Keith, and I watch his videos and I enjoy them. I have not done the radical step of going back through all his videos to the very first ones to see how it started. But maybe I'll do that tonight. But I
always do that to find the creepy start for every channel before they found their voice. It's always very endearing to see what they were like before.
Yeah, I was thinking about that yesterday. I need to go back and see if there's anything I need to delete, because I have no idea how many videos I have up. I know it's over 900. It's crazy. But
I did that particularly with my live streams when I was just talking utter trash. I've cut them off at a certain date. I didn't just make them private. I properly deleted them because they were pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, I went back and watched the Marshall grounding video I did because people have been very complimentary of that.
Yep.
And I'm like, God, it sounds so bad. The sound, my voiceover sound was so bad. And
but again, as long as the information's there.
Well, the information's great, but I'm thinking about recreating that video, or at least doing a voiceover, replicating what I said on there and just replacing all the audio.
That video has had a resurgence recently. I'm not sure what triggered that, but I've been asked about that video a lot recently. And I think that's great to have a video to refer someone to, so I don't have to sit there and write a 10-paragraph email. It's fantastic.
Well, my invoice will be in the mail. Yeah, no, I've gotten a lot of good feedback from other techs and app builders about that. It's not like I am the guardian of all knowledge or this is my discovery. I'm just the first schmuck who spent the time to show everyone kind of the details and little pictures to make it to make stuff that we have to go through books to learn more available to guitarists. So it's not like I'm the giver of knowledge. I'm just the documenter of something which is known but rarely is well understood. And I can name a few major amp companies that need to go back and watch that video.
Oh, yeah.
Todd, Jenny, I'm constantly behind. Hopefully we'll get caught up. I put your video up there, your question up by mistake, but I did see it. Is there a way to get the harmonic complexity of a train wreck in other amps? Meds and Amplification says, yeah, you can get it out of a AB165. You can get it out of a Dumble. All three amps are based on the same basic circuit. Like I was talking with Dave, you can take that same topology of this is where the tube stages are, this is where the dividers are, and by sculpting them slightly different ways, you can get those three different things. You can, go back and listen to that Tone King Sky King I did, the playing video and the one before that where I swapped out the board, and the great harmonic response and the instant feedback I'm getting just sitting there noodling. It's a 5E3 deluxe channel, which is fed into one more gain stage, and that one more gain stage has a dummy tone stack, and the only variable in that tone stack is the mids. So you're adding more gain, and you can bring out or lower the mids going to the next stage. There's nothing magical about that. It's kind of doing the same thing the Mark Series Maces did. Hey, it's actually doing it better, but there are trade-offs to what Sky King's doing because you're only varying the mids. You have to like their predetermined treble and bass settings, and it's a little bit dark for some uses. But it's harmonically complex, just like a train wreck is, and certainly costs less than a genuine train wreck.
Everything does.
Here's one for you, Briggs. Here's one for you, not Jason. Sorry, the other Australian, Brad.
Bradford.
Yeah, actually know you quite well. Any recommendations for speaker replacement for a Princeton Reverb?
Well, I just did a video of the GE10C. In my opinion, it's still a little bit spiky in the top end. The customer for that Princeton rebuild, I was very happy with it though. He was still tossing up whether to go with the ET10 or the G10C from WGS. So I purchased both because I'm building a couple of Princetons coming up soon anyway, which might be a bit of a collaboration with a well-known Australian artist that wants to build one as well, which will be cool.
Very cool.
Stay posted for that one. I prefer the ET10 personally because it's got it's sort of more emphasis to the lower mid-range, gives you more warmth, and the top end's got a slight roll-off to it. So as you're pushing those Fender circuits into a bit of output overdrive, in absence of any sort of cut caps across the plates of the outputs, it tones back a little bit of that top end that can be a bit spiky otherwise. So personal preference for me is the ET10, but I slam those amps really hard. So because I play like a Neanderthal.
Yeah, I was watching that and thinking, my God, he's using this Princeton exactly opposite from how most people play a Princeton. Well, that's fine. Is that's an late 70s that had the push pull? Was that a linear or audio taper on that? It sounded like it might be linear.
That was a linear taper. So that's the other thing I offered him. I said we could change that pot out and make it a bit more gradual. But what he does, I always try to ask, what's their style? How do they play? A lot of other techs who are just electronics guys that don't ask this stuff. They don't know to ask it.
Right.
But what he does is he's one of the good guys that plays with their volume down around 5-6. He's got bleed caps on his guitar. So he uses his volume control as a gain control. So he'll knock the gain knock the front end volume up quite a bit, and he'll use his pinky to regulate the volume and push into overdrive for a bit of a boost, which is a great way of doing it. Yeah. Super simple, and it's very effective. That's all you need to do.
Sounds like he would prefer the G10. He would prefer the ET10 then for what he's doing.
Probably, yeah, but he does play clean, but he just pushes into overdrive. Now, the reason that I played that thing harder than you normally play at Princeton, there was a reason for it. A lot of people, I think, viewers of my channel, from the comments that I get, a lot of people think I'm just a bit of a fucking idiot that just doesn't know what he's doing.
Welcome to the world of YouTube commenters. I'm either a genius or a cretin and nothing in between. And you just have to ignore both extremes. You just got to ignore it, man.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it gets to you, but unless you explicitly explain every tiny little thing that you're doing, people just assume that you don't know what you're doing. So the reason I pushed that thing a bit harder than usual is because the aforementioned artist who we're talking about collaborating with, building one each remotely, he's a rock guy. He's a heavy rock guy. So I wanted to show him what a Princeton can be with the voicing changes that I did to that one, and that it can be a rock amp. Because currently he's using Blues DeVille's on the road. And let's face it, there's many better amps than that.
Yeah. Well, but, to answer the question that the guy had, I would say if you're running a Princeton high, like you showed in that video, the ET10 would be great because you're going to have a little smoother high end. If you're going for the cleaner stuff primarily, the G10C is going to be it's going to sound like a tiny little twin. It's going to be very sparkly clean. But there's so much made of differences online. It's not like you lose all high end if you go with the ET10 or that the G10C is mega bright. It's a slight difference.
Yeah,
they're both great, and a great player can sound great with either. But again, that was a brand new G10C, which can be fizzy for the first 2 or 3 weeks of its life. Yeah, that thing's going to smooth out.
I did massage the surround to break it in a little bit, very gently. That does help, but nothing helps it more than just pure rock and roll, mate.
Yeah, well, you gave it a head start there.
Yeah, that's the other reason. So I just wanted to talk quickly about the marketing spiel that you get from these speaker manufacturers and how meaningless it is.
Yeah.
So let's read the standard ET10 marketing material here. So the ET10 is the 10-inch version of one of our most popular speakers, the ET65. The ET10 boasts a tone reminiscent of its 12-inch counterpart. I'd say that's true, but with a bit more of a pronounced mid-range. Well, of course it is because it's a 10-inch. The low end of this 10 is surprisingly heady, but remains tight in all situations.
I thought it was
what
oaky.
Does that mean?
I thought it was oaky.
Yeah, I was getting
with hints of rosemary and dung.
Yeah, and a little bit horse stable-y. I'm talking about cigars now. Top it off with a smooth but articulate top end. So what does that mean? I guess smooth, yeah, you can say that. But they never want to say this one's got less treble than that one, because you can't say this has got less of something. Everything's got more of everything. And when you try and compare the marketing spiel to different amps, I think that's part of the reason why everyone gets confused, because it's utter bullshit.
Yeah, well, I like WGS speakers. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Some of them I have not liked at all, but overall I like them. And it's not because they're less expensive at my cost. I think they're good speakers and they sound great. But I despise the British-American subdivision. I think that is meaningless.
It's not a bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're not the only ones doing it. People think that's an American speaker, that's a British speaker. No. There are plenty of eminences that sound. Are they American? Yeah. Do they have any high end? No.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it mean?
And Eminence do OEM speakers as well that really, really suck. So all the Fender Blues Juniors and stuff, they're Eminence drivers. You see that telltale little tag on the magnet on the edge? That's an Eminence OEM tag. So they make speakers down to a very low price as well, like replacement OEM stuff. I've ordered some. I've got shut up, coffee machine. I've got some that are like $50 for a 12-inch driver that's 80 watts.
Yeah.
And I bought a box of them, and it literally comes in a big box with them all back to back. So even the shipping was like economical, because sometimes people bring you a cheap amp that's got a blown driver, and you need to give them a choice, right? So So Eminence also do like $500, $600, $700 speakers. So
yeah,
everything
I'm not slamming
so,
Eminence, but I mean,
no.
I mean, that's trouble with Eminence is they make so many different speakers.
Yeah,
you can try 5 and hate all 5 of them. Well, they got another 30 you would have liked. Kyle Bull here is dropping 2 brand new Mesa brand new vintage 30s, and 2 brand new Chinese vintage 30s into a Mojitone Grand Canyon 4x12 to break them in before I do a video comparing them to see if there are major differences. I think the Mesas are still the made in UK. I have not done that comparison between the UK and the Chinese vintage 30s. I've heard things, apocryphal things, but I've not done that comparison myself. So I'll look for that, Kyle. I want to know what your results are. I have a suspicion. I can predict it. But let's see if I'm right.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Christopher Butler, I'm still not sure if we really answered your Mesa alternative question. That's the trouble when you get when you're talking with Dave, you're talking with Brad. You start off here and you end up in Wyoming. You intended to do this thing to answer a question, but not all things are a straight line in our world. Remember that we're not let out of our respective basements very often. So when we get to talk to another human.
Yeah, it's weird just being at home. Like I've been at the shop for 15 hours a day.
Yeah. Let's see.
But I'm at home, and you know what? I brought this with me.
Ooh, you got the same thing I've got.
Soldering up stuff. Last night, because Michelle had girls' night, I started building a couple of these things just to zen out while I'm watching YouTube. They're Aeon effects pedals. They're pretty fun to make. That's a Dark Glass Microtubes ripoff. Mm-hmm. And then I've got the now that Dave's gone, I can.
He may still watch this, so.
I'm building a Aeon Tempest, which is a BEAD ripoff. So if he offered PCBs, I'd build one of his too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you have so much free time.
Oh, yeah, it's great. I spend my free time doing this shit too.
After this, I'm running to the grocery store, having Mom over for dinner. I'm making homemade spaghetti and meatballs. So,
nice.
Yeah.
It's getting into the cooler weather there, yeah?
It's getting the cooler weather. We're gonna do it right. Let's see. PF's got one. He says he saw a so-called tech on YouTube that switched the mid spot on Marshall from 25K to 50K linear and claimed it doubles the gain. 81 JCM 800, couldn't hear a difference on the video. Thanks. Technically, it does increase the gain quite a bit. It doesn't increase the gain twice. It may give you almost twice the gain increase at that stage, but the next stage is not going to transfer. Here's the thing. Aside from the first input, when the guitar comes in, if say the input signal changes by 10 volts, the next stage is not going to change by that same ratio because each stage is going to have a certain amount of amplification and a certain amount of compression. So the first stage, you are amplifying by often a factor of 1,000. So if you have a ratio change in your dynamic playing, that gets represented out of the first stage by that same amount. Subsequent stages, you're not going up as much, so you begin to hit compression. So where the tone stack is in that Marshall is right before the phase inverter, and so you're not going to get if you increase the gain there well, you go in 50K mid spot, you're going to be making the entire tone stack less effective, and you're going to be loading the preceding stage less. So you will get a gain increase, but it's not going to be dramatic. It can be useful, like Eddie's 68 plexi was rumored to. Actually, I know it had a 50K mid spot, and there's nothing wrong with that. More is good, right? But it's not twice as much in isolation.
I think people are often, this is a case of getting gain and saturation confused. most of the distortion has taken place before the tone stack in a JCM 800. So you might be changing the gain, but you're changing the gain of not technically the gain, but you're changing the amount of attenuation that the tone stack will give after the distortion's already taken place. So you just
right before master volume. So if you if you're increasing the gain from the mid spot, odds are you're turning the master volume down a little bit because hey, that's too much.
It's like you just turn the master volume like quarter of a notch. What's the point?
Hey, Jeff McElwain says Keith is a fan of my channel. That's very cool. I'm a big fan of his. In fact, this is as close as I'm going to get to stealing his look on here. I do have a blue denim shirt, but between him and Beato, I feel that they've already cornered that market. I'm not going to go there very often, but I love to have Keith on one of these.
Please tell me you're wearing blue jeans right now too. Double denim,
man.
Ah.
If I can figure out where to stand, khakis, man. Oh.
I was hoping you were wearing the Canadian tuxedo.
No, I'm not Canadian. You see.
We can laugh as Canadians.
And I got my brown shit kickers on.
You're just lucky I'm clothed.
We all are. Yeah. Yeah, I need to check out Y5 White World video. And I enjoyed watching how many people Keith pissed off with his Les Paul players and Strat players who changed the world, because you can never put enough in any of those lists. And whoever you choose, there's someone else whose favorite guy gets left out. But I enjoy everything he does.
Yeah, I'll put that on my play later list when I'm wiring up pick guards. That'll be fun.
Let's see here.
Someone's asking about champ layouts, JDS, using 25 microfarad at the same place. Fender scheme is using 2 microfarads. I wonder if that's talking about the preamp bypass cap. Or maybe the, is that possible? What would be the difference in sound? If they're talking about like some of the...
yeah. In the champ, AA764, you can use a 2.2 microfarad, 25 or higher volt cap. That's just a cathode bypass cap.
Yeah, it just changes the amount of gain and the amount of bottom end from that stage.
Yeah.
Some of the earlier champ drawings had no bypass cap, and the amp still works and it still pushes in overdrive. It's just a lot less bottom end. I'm not sure. Do you know what point they started bringing the bypass caps in the V1 stage in the Tweed stuff?
I've seen amps which had it, which are earlier than amps which didn't, and vice versa. Right. I'm not sure if it's consistent.
It's no Fender. They probably just ran out of caps. I'll put them out anyway.
Yeah. And I've seen Fenders from 1956 that have had the wrong value part in there for 65 years, and the owner never heard anything wrong with it at all.
It's like when I was watching an interview with Bill Hurd from the Commodore 128. It didn't matter if the thing failed after they got it under your Christmas tree. What mattered was they got it under your Christmas tree. They'd fix it later.
Yeah. I mean, people. Dave was singing the praises of Silvertone amps earlier, and I've got a 1484 here that I'm trying to make into a real boy again. But those amps were never built to be played 60 years later. They were built so little Johnny had a guitar amp under the Christmas tree after he saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. They had their design. They were designed to be made cheaply and sold inexpensively, and they were. It's a miracle that some of them still work.
Yeah, I blame Jack White. For all that stuff.
Yeah, I've never gotten that whole thing. I saw that movie. It Might Get Loud. And no disrespect to Edge or Jack White, it just seems such an odd bunch of people to bring together. Edge has great strengths. Improv is not one of them.
I think it was almost like a punk movement to a degree, because it was like anyone can get up there and change the world, and I kind of really respect him from that point of view. He had a drummer that could barely play, and he changed the world. It's fucking impressive, in my opinion.
Well, that's fine, and I don't have a problem with people who like what he does, though it never appealed to me. But that movie, and what was odd to me is that obviously of the three of them, and from the filmmaker's perspective, Edge had like 1 day's availability. Jimmy Page had 1 day's availability, and Jack White was like, "I'm your dude, man." So 50% of the movie is Jack White nailing strings to boards. And just showing his record collection, so because he had time compared to the other guys.
Yeah,
I didn't think
that had time too.
I didn't think that after watching that I knew any more about any of them as people or as musicians. So
just not the greatest filmmaker.
But
I haven't seen it yet.
It was cool because we got to see the right way or the way that Page plays them now. Some of those parts that are tricky little things. There's always little open string things that are hard to catch when the cymbals and drums are there.
Oh yeah.
All right. I think I turned my audio up a little bit because Brad's louder than Dave.
Oh, I'm louder today. Wow.
Yeah, you're louder this time. You're louder on your phone than you are with your full setup. It must be your
I
phone.
Just get rid of all my camera gear, mate.
Well, I don't think you should do that because then what would you collect? Spores, mold, and fungus.
Whiskey.
You wouldn't collect whiskey, not for very long.
I know.
You'd be a repository, very different than a collection.
True.
All right. Well, we have now gone the full 3 hours, and my teeth are floating. I got to go to the grocery store. Thanks for joining us here at the tail end, Brad. And this Thursday, like I said, I will be with Jason at Head First.
That'll be
I guess on his channel. Everyone go there, and if Jason's smart, he'll make you have to be a subscriber to watch the damn thing. And thank you all for joining here. And I'm sorry if anyone's question did not get addressed. We'll have to do this again, and we'll try to catch as many as possible. Catch them all. See you, Mr. B. And let me go.
Sorry about the phone quality.
That's not what you should apologize about. All right, so let's finish this up. I got a bunch of videos coming out this week, and now that those parts arrived, I can finish up a bunch of stuff that I've been like, when is this part ever going to get here? The post office is having woes. Next month, tentative guest, I'm going to confirm that, it's going to be Chris Nix, who's a Nashville studio session guitarist, amazing player. He's a touring guitarist. He's a producer. He plays with country guys. He plays with Billy Sheehan in his side projects. And he was a touring guitarist in Jonathan Davis from Korn's solo project last year and the year before that. And he'll be doing all kinds of stuff at that level. But he's the kind of guy who uses the toys that guys like me and Dave Friedman make and Brad. And he also tinkers and solders and does kind of cool stuff. And he has an amazing studio, and he knows how all this stuff works. And I thought it'd be interesting to get the perspective of a guy both in the studio and on the road, and especially under the pressure of the Nashville scenes. Look for Chris next month, and I'll confirm that date very soon. Until then, everyone be well, and see you next time.